Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Stephen, or should I say Stephen, was always lonely, but he never blamed his loneliness on his pride and rigidity, which often turned into cruelty. No, it's certainly not my character, did he think, when his son once again said how cruel this father was. He had heard such reproaches from people around him many times, starting with his son and ending even with the cleaning lady he had fired. He'd heard it before. "Son, you should have lived your life." That's when we talk. Mason, his son, and his joy. All that was left of his first wife, Nancy. They were a perfect couple, and from their childhood yard. Not to mention the institute, the job in the prestigious foreign ministry, where not without the help of his father, Stephen got a job for both of them. Even then, they were told that they could not find a better couple, and from the face of an uncle one could paint pictures or even icons. But a tragic accident cut short all the plans and hopes of the young. What's the matter with the intervention of the powers that be? The worst day of Stephen's life he always remembered. The road-wrecked wife's car and her body covered with a sheet. A trivial case, as the investigators said at the time, of a wet road. And there. But Stephen, who had already then reached considerable heights, the diplomat realized that it was not just that. It's just the officially approved version for the press or internal reports. But he's the one they want to remove from the political arena. And his wife's death is a warning. "Stephen, we certainly grieve with you and understand how much you loved our daughter," Nancy's father said. "But I beg you by God, we'll leave and from the ministry of the book and our grandson." Only then did the man realize how serious it was, since his father-in-law had already told him directly that it was time to leave and his grandson's life was at risk. "So you got a call too. James, you don't have to say anything, just nod your head. And that's it." But my father-in-law wouldn't say anything. He didn't even have the energy to nod. After his daughter's death, he just turned and walked away, leading his weeping wife by the hand. Since then, Stephen filed a report for dismissal for family reasons, and taking his son, simply left such a happy and prosperous Germany. "There's nothing for me to do here. Son, it's time to go home," he said to little Mason, sitting in the train that started for Moscow. "And what's there?" "Oh, come on. Nancy's father promised to get him a job in the ministry, so he won't be out of work for sure." And with his knowledge of language, diplomacy, and persuasive skills, Stephen was not afraid of being left without money, but apparently the diplomatic Olympus was not his destiny. To be more precise, his father-in-law immediately hinted to him about it. Having once invited a high ministerial department to his office, Stephen went up in the elevator and understood that the conversation would not be simple and not on simple topics. Since his father-in-law had summoned him to his office, "Stephen, you understand," the father-in-law began, looking at his son-in-law carefully. "James, is that you? If there's no room, just say so." "I understand." "No, Stephen, it's a different matter. There is a place, but the essence of your work is connected with something else, so to speak, with criminal elements." "What's that?" The young man was surprised beyond measure. "You almost forced me out of the offices of the German Foreign Ministry. You said it's dangerous for my grandson there. So here in the capital you told me about crime. Out of the fire and into the fire. I didn't know anything about it until the last minute. I only took over a couple months ago." The man stood up and went to the window, nervously began to smoke out the window and rub the tightly wrapped. He realized how ridiculous this all looked. But on the other hand, what could he do? Nothing. He was simply confronted with the fact that he either had a job and a well-fed, secure life, or he could settle disputes between criminals at the international level. Or I'll ask Monsieur to retire, so to speak. But after that, there's no guarantee we won't make the same offer to your son-in-law. And you have a grandson growing up. What's left of your daughter, so to speak? So, James, frankly, I don't understand. I'm willing to work here in the capital. But if it's dangerous here, is it worth it to change places? It was. And my father-in-law banged his hand on the windowsill, so hard that the glass ran down. They called me from the top, told me that you and I should be here. And you'll work here too. And when I'm gone, you'll take my place. And don't argue. Stephen understood, or rather, knew perfectly well how dangerous such political backstage games are. He also realized that if he wanted to be dragged into this game, he would be dragged in no matter how. So he just took a deep breath and sat down at the table opposite his father-in-law's chair. Quietly asked, "Well, suppose I agree. I'll work. So you at least tell me what is to be done." "That's a different conversation. I'll tell you briefly, and then you'll get involved." As the work progresses, so to speak, although the essence of his work was simple and clear, under the cover of diplomatic immunity to travel between countries, to help in the transportation of currency, diamonds, and even drugs, sometimes to help solve disputes between opposing criminal sides of his country, and so to speak, friendly in quotes state such an independent from the side, not interested in the result of the referee. And if his advice or word satisfies both sides, he gets his percentage and recognition in such a narrow circle. Yeah, James, you were friends, but you tell me, why should I have left Germany? You could do all this sitting in a cushioned armchair in Munich or Berlin. And here there are such passions. No, we need our presence here in the capital. That's why they killed Nadia. Couldn't they, these criminal bosses of yours? They could just tell Stephen, "Don't touch my soul. I'll do it myself." He asked why. Why couldn't the issue be resolved, so to speak, through negotiations, but he didn't get an answer. What does it matter now? Nancy, no. Maybe he didn't want to. Or was he learning to leave? Who knows? And here they've decided everything in one fell swoop. Say, Stephen, let's not bring it up. You and I have been clearly shown that they are the authorities, and we are nobody. And we should listen to them. Otherwise, they'll kill us. Mason, I hear you. Yeah, you're right. I hope you realize the danger. It's been many years since that moment. And now Stephen has already become a respected man, a retired diplomat, and a shadow referee at the meetings of the strong international criminal world. Even at the very beginning, he asked his father-in-law that, say, they have their own laws. Why would they bring in diplomats? Stephen, you understand, it's one thing for them to solve their issues according to their rules. But it's another if the solution of the dispute is backed up by the words of a diplomat. It's like God's blessing. And it's always at a meeting to solve other organizational issues of transportation. Okay, that I'm making friends with you now with these moments. Just take it on faith. And whether or not I agreed, what was there left to do? Wait for him to be pinned down. Whether by threats or persuasion is not so important. It does. He's got to get back on his feet, but he can't go into politics. Although Mason didn't really want to be. But as time went on, Stephen took his father-in-law's place at the embassy, dealing with criminal masterminds. Yeah, he almost became a criminal mastermind himself, and all thanks to his intelligence and ability to persuade and solve the most intricate issues. Stephen was invited to every serious convention. Yes, Stephen San, your intelligence and cunning can be envied even by the great Mongol himself. Thank you, Mr. Jacob. Jacob was a recognized authority, known in certain circles as Tarek, in charge of Mongolian criminal matters. If he recognized Stephen's authority, it was worth a lot. It's not praise, it's recognition of your talent. You know, some people call me cruel. But what do you say to that? In our world, cruelty is the destiny of the wise and great, but it is not in your words and deeds. Yes, it's more the province of the weak. Thank you again, but it didn't help me keep my wife, and it won't help me get her back now. I've heard of your grief. I grieve with you, honored one. But I'll speak on my behalf. You have a smart and handsome son. May Allah grant him many years. Don't forget about him. By the way, how is he doing? I hear he graduated high school with honors. He'll probably follow in his father's footsteps. No, Jacob. He's decided to go to medical school, but he's not sure where he's going yet. But I think Allah grant him a bright path and admires authority came out of Stephen's office and wondered if behind these words are not hidden threats. Though they shouldn't. After all, the Mongol was not the kind of man to make veiled threats like that. He could be called Stephen's only friend. If the threats were real, he would have said so directly. Mason, hello, how are you? Stephen tried not to betray the excitement in his voice, but his son knew him too well. Hey, Dad, I went to the movies with the guys. What's up? No, nothing's wrong. I just called to see if you were okay. Okay, Dad, I've learned your habits. You probably got threatened again or something. Right? Stephen mentally agreed with his son. True, there had been a couple of times when he'd been threatened by people who were unhappy with the arbitration decision, and his, in particular, thieves in the law. But if you take everything to heart, you can immediately head in the noose and hang like Judas in the hay. No, he will never let him and his son be threatened. No, son, now you're wrong. By the way, you've decided on your future medical practice. Dad, I told you. We'll decide what we're gonna do in our 5th year. In the meantime, we'll be doing general training. Okay, son, then you'll see what the housekeeper has prepared. I hope you've already packed for college. When do you have to leave? In a week. What to pack? A couple of pants and t-shirts, underwear, and that's it. Don't worry, Dad. Okay, son, then I'll be late tonight. Don't wait up. And Stephen hung up. Yes, the son has grown up. He'll soon pack a bag and be well. And he'll be on his own. Although no, there is still work at home. A housekeeper who cooks and cleans. But that's not it. The man went to the window, opened it wide open, breathed in the warm summer air, and thought about it. Shouldn't I get married again? Hell, he's not that old. Maybe he should think about what he'd been told more than once. You can't bring Nadia back. His son had grown up, and he was all alone. It pressed on him a huge weight, like a stone that should be rolled up, but it keeps trying to roll down. Sisyphean labor, that's how it is with Stephen. All the rolling of the stone upwards. What's the use? For whom? And for what? The man sat down at a wide table of solid mahogany, splashed himself in a wide glass of 10-year-old cognac, and thought about it. If he decided to marry, how would Mason take it? And even if his son doesn't mind, is it worth changing his life so radically? Perhaps it should, but who should he consult? And my hand involuntarily reached for the phone and dialed the number of the old and wise Mongol. Jacob, good evening. No distractions. Greetings, Stephen. Oh no, of course not. We're having an evening tea party, and I'm glad to have your call. I've got a little business to attend to. The man hesitated and thought for a moment. Was it worth telling his question to a stranger? But if you think about it, an outsider's view might be more objective and correct. We should talk face to face. Mongol realized that this man wasn't going to call just like that. So it was worth listening to him and giving him advice. Yes, if you can, any time that's convenient for you. All right, Stephen, I heard you. Let's meet at 7 o'clock on the waterfront. There's a lovely restaurant there. We'll sit, we'll talk. Confidentiality guaranteed. Thank you. See you tonight, then. Already in the evening, men sat in a separate office and drank fragrant coffee. What's that? The aromatic beverage was made here with perfection. It was brewed by a real Arab, and not just on gas or in a coffee machine, but on hot sand, like the tribes did in the old days. And what did you want to talk to me about, Stephen? Jacob, if you don't mind, I'd love to be on a first-name basis. You and I have been through so much. It's about time we started talking on a first-name basis. So what's the question? You see, I was married a long time ago. My wife died. Oh yeah, I think you know all that. And now my son is going to medical school. And I caught myself thinking that I'll just stay in the household, and nobody needs an old man. Jacob perfectly understood his condition, so simply continued his glory. Yes, you're right. But that's not what's bothering me. I thought maybe I should get married. But Jacob, you won't believe me. I don't even have anyone to consult in this respect. I see your point. Of course, I won't look for a bride for you yet. Unless you ask, but I'll give you advice. You're not that old, so it's worth it. Thank you, Jacob. Well, as for a bride, I don't even know where to look for one. Jacob, with my acquaintances, connections, and wealth. Let's start with where you and your wife met. We've known each other since we were kids, so it's easy. Now, I guess young people today, they want money cruises. What can I give them? Criminal meetings or lunch? And he waved his hand, showing that he simply does not know how to get acquainted with the opposite sex young girls. And to choose older ladies, I understand. And in this respect, I cannot help, only advice. You are not so old can find yourself a beautiful woman and create a family in relation to your son. I think he won't mind. He's an adult, he'll get married soon. And you? Tulai nodded his head in gratitude and took a drink of flavored coffee. Just then his phone rang, and Jacob quickly got ready for the meeting, apologizing for such a short visit. Stephen, with all due respect to you, I apologize. I have to run to you. Stephen, with all due respect. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to run to you. You understand, things are going to get a little bit messy. Stephen nodded his head and, rising, held out his hand. The men shook hands and parted as good friends. Jacob left, and Stephen continued to sit at the table, his thoughts flying through his head like a whirlwind. Stephen raised his hand and gestured, called out to the waitress, "Girl, can I have 200 grams of the best cognac? And please, another cup of coffee." The waitress nodded and went to fulfill the order. Stephen sat at the table, drank cognac and coffee, looked out the window at the people passing by, and caught himself thinking that he did not want to go home. There is silence and emptiness of the big apartment, and Mason's son is already on his own. He has only company and girls on his mind. And the institute, it's his job to wait for his son on vacation. Ask him about his studies and student life. That's all. And what will you hear from him? Old man? I doubt it. You're not that old. The young girl's voice made Stephen flinch and almost spill coffee on his pants. I'm sorry if I startled you. I really didn't mean to. The girl defiantly turned around and sat down at a neighboring table. The waitress came over and put glasses of pure wine and fragrant coffee in front of her. Yes, apparently, the girl is not the first time here. Since the waitress knows what to serve and how Stephen stared at the girl and almost fell off the chair. No wonder she was almost an exact replica of his first wife, Nancy. The now deceased Stephen could not believe his eyes. After all, this was his first and only love, whom he had lost many years before. And now he had found, excuse me, something wrong. The girl looked at the man who was staring at her intently. No, I'm sorry. It's just that you look so much like my wife. I hope she's not in that cafe right now. I'm sorry, but I don't think she'd like you looking at me like that. Oh no, she's not here, and she's certainly not gonna make a scene. But you're an exact replica of her. If I didn't know my Nancy, I'd think you were her daughter. Her name is Nancy. That's a beautiful name. But really, my name is Molly. That's a beautiful name too. Molly, can I invite you to have coffee with me? But we're having coffee. But we're at opposite tables. Although, if you'd like, you can sit at mine. I'd love to keep you company. Thank you for inviting me. She's a nice girl. Would you like to order something? My name is Stephen, by the way. No, thank you, Stephen. I'm having a coffee and a glass of white and clear wine. And so it began. Their amazing and fascinating communication, which gradually flowed into a closer and more trusting relationship. But that's what Stephen thought. Although at a deep level he realized that such a beauty needs his money rather than himself. And in fact, Molly Williams needed his money, his entire empire and influence. Molly came into Stephen's life, not by accident. The girl observed the life and activities of the diplomat Stephen Bracker, his son Mason, and in the beginning thought about marrying him. Molly, why do you want a son? womanize his father, and take all the money to work, painfully told Molly friend Camille. The very idea of seducing Stephen was hers. What is there to say, Molly and beautiful, and not stupid with a figure. She loves money, and not shy to share it with her only friend. All right, what about Mason? He's the primary heir. You realize if Stephen goes down, all the money goes to Sonny. I realize that. Then she'll just poison him first. What's the big deal? I'll help you. I'm a chemist by training for a reason. Or am I? Camille's plan was brilliantly simple and ingenious at the same time. Molly loved money and the good life, so it wasn't hard to convince her of her own idea. And if her friend kills either father or son, she will always have ironclad evidence against her. You won't pay your friends forever, but you won't want to. I'll tell the father or the son, and you'll go to jail. And I'll get recognition, honor, and respect. Molly understood that too. Although the desire to live a beautiful life, bathe in luxury, go to Bali and Paris prevailed. And what can I say? She thought naively, "Girl, if you do everything wisely, you can get rid of Camille in time." Molly agreed to her friend's plan. From that day on, the two conspired. All began to follow Stephen and Mason. And if with the first was more difficult, then Mason Molly laughed quickly. It came out corny and unexpected, as a friend would say. And I improvised on the spot. One spring day, things just didn't go according to plan. And Molly nose to nose ran into each other at the store. A conversation ensued with Mason. Young people liked each other and began to meet. From that moment, in the hands of the girl, streams of information about the influential father. And although the guy did not tell who his father was, but willingly shared information about his habits, where he dines, and where he likes to walk, which was more than enough for her friends. It was the information that Molly received that gave her the idea to get acquainted, purely by chance, so to speak, with Stephen at a cafe on the waterfront. And the simple plan paid off. Stephen fell in love with Molly, who didn't expect her looks to play into her hands at all. When she heard she looked like her first wife, Molly was overjoyed. Then it was possible to act quite actively. After all, she had such a trump card in her hands. Mentally, Molly lost her hands, but inwardly she was frightened. The thought of having to poison at least one or even two people. Camille, I agree with you, of course, but I'm scared. Aren't you scared of dating a father and son at the same time? You realize that at the very least, one of them will leave you. At the most, you'll lose all rights to the plan. And then what? But if we get caught? Why would we get caught? I'm poisoning Mason. But after you marry yourself, and then it's on to him. How's that for a plan? Don't worry about my work. I'm an excellent chemist. I'll make sure no one finds out. Molly shook her lips and had nothing to say to her friend's argument. She knew that Camille was a first-class chemist. She had taken all the Olympics at school in chemistry with a gold medal. She was valued at work for being able to determine the composition of a compound almost by eye. And now that she was helping her, there was no reason to doubt that the work would be perfect. Okay, Camille, what's the plan? Dump Mason and put all your attention and your beauty into Stephen. If it comes down to marriage, after you're signed, I'll slip him some poison. And that's it. You are wife and Harris. And while you're enjoying your honeymoon, I'll think of a new way to poison your aged spouse. The plan seemed simple and easy enough at the same time, and that alarmed Molly, though it gave her a chance to execute it. She thought and slowly nodded her head. Well then, let's start on Sunday and get started. Stephen likes to have coffee at lunchtime at Terry's Cafe on the waterfront. That's where I'll finish it. Help wanted at home. Inner exulted that the friend had fallen for, in fact, her ingenious plan to seize Stephen's money and real estate. But the girls did not know what plan Mother Fate was preparing for them, although everything began successfully enough. Molly, as if unintentionally, met Stephen, began a relationship. Mason himself quite easily and simply carried the parting of the next axis. I did not interfere with the girl in the realization of her plan. But after 6 months of meeting, spent together days and nights, Stephen decided to make Molly a proposal. The man fought long and hard about how to talk to Mason about it, but he couldn't figure it out. "Molly, how do I tell my son I'm getting married?" The question didn't take the girl by surprise. One beautiful winter morning, I invited him over for winter vacation and say, "What's the big deal?" Although he always seems to come himself, it'll be a surprise for him. Although the girl tried to make a casual appearance, but inwardly worried about how her appearance in her father's house would be perceived. Mason himself, they had known each other before, and now it turns out that she broke up with him for his father. Okay, the girl thought, we'll figure it out as we go along. And she wasn't wrong. Before New Year's Eve, Mason came on winter vacation to his father's house, where he met Molly. From surprise, the guy even stopped on the threshold of his father's house and dropped the bag from his hands. But on his father's question about what happened, did not answer anything. "Molly, hi. I understand you left me for my father and his 1 million. Asked the guy to the girl when he came out of his room into the kitchen late at night. "Well, how can I put it, Mason? Realize that you're his son. I found out not too long ago when I saw your picture on the mantle. But at the time we broke up, I chose him because he's mature, romantic, wealthy. I'm sorry, Mason, you're probably right. We're all trying to build our own happiness. Molly, but you do realize that my father is not young. And if anything were to happen to him, I have the entire estate. You might get some of it, but it would be a fraction of his estate. I understand. But that's not the most important thing in our relationship. I'm a first-rate translator myself, so I can earn a caviar sandwich. And I think my father will leave me something too. It may not be much, but it's enough to get me started." "That's fair, at least." Mason nodded understandingly and simply took a bottle of water from the refrigerator and left. What could you do? My father had always been surrounded by such money-hungry hotties, but once in Kosovo, he'd get them in a heartbeat. And here. And then suddenly, he decided to get married. Did Dad fail his famous intuition? It shouldn't. If it did, maybe he should give her a chance. But he didn't get that chance. The relationship between Molly and Mason as such exhausted itself, and the girl focused all her attention and energy on Stephen. Although it was not easy. Constant meetings and solving diplomatic issues on a business trip, Molly guessed what questions often solves her potential husband, and she was worried. After all, she realized that one stray bullet could derail her plans. But Stephen was as good as his word. Neither bullet nor stray blade could take him. He deftly sidestepped every trap, like a musketeer fighting off the cardinal's men with his sword. Yes, Camille, you can't imagine that he's immune to knives, bullets, nothing. We were walking the other day from the theater. I called him to the embankment, and specifically to a dark corner, but there behind the old summer theater. You know, the favorite place of the inadequate. So what? And that the interest to their family life grew not by days, but by hours exactly nothing. Molly thoughtfully stretched out and poured herself and her friend a martini. Yes, friend, you know how to live beautifully. I guess your Stephen spoils you. Yes, he does. And just imagine, he enrolled me in etiquette classes, then ballroom dancing. He says it's for my future coming out. That's what he calls his diplomatic community. I don't seem to know how to make conversation, but the way I got him. And he still got me. Oh well, that's good. Let him learn. It'll be good for me. What's he getting you for New Year's? Probably that diamond necklace I showed him in the last issue of Vogue. I don't know though. Molly shrugged languidly and took a sip of the flavored drink, carelessly flipped back a curl and flicked it back. Yeah, she had gotten lucky with Stephen, and everything was basically thanks to Camille. She was the one who'd hooked her up in such a sensitive matter. And if it all works out, Camille, I couldn't have done all this without you. So, girlfriend, if it works out, I'll make you my manager, or like the top person in whatever field you're in. That'd be nice. But I'll tell you, we're worth a lot to each other, and I couldn't do it on my own. And you wouldn't have gotten to this point without my help. And the end of this whole thing is pretty much on my shoulders. So remember, girlfriend, there's more where that came from. That's true. But let's not talk about the bad stuff. I got you a present, by the way. It's from the money Stephen's giving me. And Molly took a puffy bag out of her purse and handed it to Camille. She opened it eagerly and looked at her friend in surprise. Yes, there is money and a trip for 10 days to Bali. I know that you wanted to visit Bali for a long time, so I'm waiting for you in the new year, rested and full of strength for future achievements. And they hugged. Yes, the girls had no idea that their perfect plan would have the most unexpected result. But that would come later. In the meantime, each of the participants in this play enjoyed the New Year's Eve festivities and the expectation of a miracle. A month later, Molly and Stephen were riding in a car to the airport and holding each other's hands. On the fingers of the newlyweds sparkled personalized wedding rings made to order. And at that moment, the girl was the happiest. Stephen, you don't know how happy I am. I do. Happiness is mine. Your eyes are sparkling like these two diamonds. He nodded his head and looked out the window of the car park. Everything flashed before his eyes. But the man's thoughts were far away, all in business and worries. He didn't even notice how predatorily Molly looked at him, who every day wanted to kill him more and more with every minute, with every moment he lived. She hated her lawful husband for his attitude toward everything. The way he ate, slept, spent money not always on her whims. What was there to do? Molly asked herself, only to wait until Camille arrives, until the opportunity arises and Mason stops by in his Porsche on spring break to her father's house, when she can pour poison on his plate. Too much, when Molly thought to herself, clenching her fists to a crunch, but realized that she had no right to give herself away by word, gesture, or deed just yet, to wait, to be patient, and grit her teeth as Camille had taught her. If her friend had her looks, she could do a lot of things. Molly, what do you want for New Year's Eve? I remember you showed me a necklace from a magazine, but you know, it's out of stock. It's not that it's out of stock. It's just that you have to pre-order it. It'll take a long time, and I'm afraid you won't have a present for New Year's Eve. No, there will be a gift, but you'll have to discuss it with me. Just please don't interrupt. Molly put her hand on his palm and gently squeezed her husband's fingers. Let's agree as follows. You place an order for this necklace, and on New Year's Eve, you just give me a bouquet of roses, and that's it. Are you sure? Stephen looked at his wife uncomprehendingly. He didn't expect that. In fact, he had never had a girl like Molly. Any other girl would have thrown a tantrum. Like, give me presents, like 3 times as much, and here it's just like this. But okay, if he wants to wait, let him wait, and he'll revise the gift as he sees fit. Yes, darling, I'm a sensible and prudent girl, so I don't want to spend my husband's money for nothing. As well as to spend his future inheritance, Molly thought to herself, but didn't let it show. She really didn't want her husband to spend a lot of money on anything. Though a diamond necklace is not a damn thing, but a very profitable investment, which can always be sold as needed. So I'll wait. Stephen looked askance at his wife and smiled. Look at her. She didn't demand anything. That's why he appreciated the gesture. Already near the house, the husband gave his wife his hand and helped her to get out of the car, closed the door, and put the car on the alarm. The evening passed quietly and peacefully. Probably too quiet and peaceful, Molly said to herself under her breath. Take it from under the blanket. Husband Ivan locked himself in the office again and solves his own archly important issues. Nothing, soon all this will be over. In the meantime, it is worth enjoying a quiet and peaceful life. After all, if everything planned will come true. That night Molly had nightmares. Camille and Stephen, who for some reason were asking for help, were trying to catch her by the arms. Molly, wake up. Molly cried out and sat up on the bed, feeling cold sweat running down her back. Scary dream. Stephen, I'm scared. I beg you, don't leave me. I lost you in a dream. And it wasn't even there. They called me and asked me for help. Don't worry, my girl, I won't leave you. I'll even get you from the other side. He wanted to say he'd protect her even from the dead. But it came out like this. Freudian slip. A lot of people would say that. But as it turned out, the man's words were prophetic. A week and a half later, just before Christmas, the family gathered around the big table. Molly and Stephen, Mason and Camille, who had become almost like family in this house. Mommy, here's a present for you. And Stephen held out to the girl a small printed box. Oh, what's in it? And the girl began to quickly tear open the beautiful wrapping. And when she opened it, there was no limit to her surprise. Stephen, it's a gorgeous gold set. Yes, I'm sorry, of course. It's not the one I ordered for my wife. But oh, you don't have to worry. I'm so glad. I've never gotten a gift like this before. And I don't think anyone ever will. But I also have a gift for you and your son. It may not be as lavish, but it's made with no small amount of respect and a piece of my heart. And Camille took out from a large bag 2 packages, holding out to Mason and Stephen. So this is interesting. What's the big deal about these packages? Mason began to apply the soft wrapping with interest and was simply lost in guessing what could be there. The guy realized that with a salary to give something expensive and exclusive she cannot, but also frank fake or obscene will not offer. But when he opened it, to say that he was surprised is to say nothing. White-colored scarf, tied from the finest and fluffiest thread. It was long enough to wrap around his neck several times. Wow, Camille. Did you knit it yourself? Here you go, Mason. It's white. And Stephen is light gray. And believe me, the threads are pure English wool and of the finest quality. I hope they keep you warm just a little bit. And even if you don't wear them, they'll keep my memory alive for a long time. About Mason. I don't know if he'll wear your gift to Camille, but I'll certainly wear it. And to prove his point, the man wrapped a scarf around his neck and held his head up proudly. He made a gentlemanly bow toward Camille and gave her a gorgeous smile. Camille, I can't guarantee that I'll always wear it, but today I will wear it for a couple of hours as a sign of respect and atonement for the missing gift. And the guy also wrapped the scarf around his neck. At the end of the back, everyone raised their glasses and clinked their glasses and drank a sip of sparkling wine. Only Camillus grinned gloatingly and rejoiced that her plan had succeeded. She had long thought of how to poison father and son, but only in Bali locals pointed her to one poisonous plant, which categorically could not be touched with bare hands. It was this unpretentious and unsightly plant that emitted a strong poison and could cause asphyxiation if it came into contact with the skin, even if it was only for a short time. It was this information that pushed the girl to solve her long-dormant question about poisoning father and son, and what was there to think she'd done. So read anything and presented it as a gift. Problem solved. And the occasion was a great Christmas, and the gift itself would have looked appropriate enough. It certainly wouldn't arouse suspicion. And it worked. Camille didn't tell her friend the details of her plan. After all, everything had been agreed upon in advance, and she had just had the opportunity. If it works, I'll let you know later. No, but then we'll look for another option. The advantage of this method of killing was that few of her colleagues could detect this type of poison in contact with air and skin. He acted quickly, decomposing in the air quickly, and acted like an unknown politician. Within half an hour, 2 ambulances and a morgue car were outside the house. Molly, are you sure your husband Stephen and his son Mason are not on any medication? They haven't eaten or drunk anything new this day. The policeman's question sounded strange, but the girl realized that it was standard interrogation procedure. Yes, I'm sure we ordered food from a restaurant where everyone knows us. We go there quite often for drinks. Here, open the husband's bar. Bottle was taken from there, all the alcohol. Husband buys it himself. I don't understand what happened. We were sitting in. You please calm down and tell us what happened. Any detail is important to us. After all, you realize that your husband and his son are quite famous people, and the situation itself must be understood. Nothing supernatural happened. We ordered a dish at the restaurant in the morning, and by 7 o'clock it was hot. Then my friend Mason and Stephen got together. Then they both started choking. Although we all ate from the same table, drank champagne from the same bottle. Although no, Mason and Stephen raised their first glass with champagne. And then they poured their own cognac. There's a bottle over there, but it's an expensive drink. Molly sobbed to her heart's content. She didn't understand how it could happen that her husband and stepson started choking out of the blue. And then they just went into convulsions. The girl watched them convulsing on the floor and could do nothing, being in a stupor. Only Camille quickly dialed the number of the ambulance and called the team, and then the police ambulance. Mason was taken to the morgue and her husband was taken to intensive care. Now she and the perpetrator are being interrogated in separate rooms. Molly, I believe you. I don't even doubt your word. But the investigator got up and began to walk back and forth on the expensive Persian carpet, not knowing where to begin. The old king knew who Bracker was and realized that there were many people who wanted him dead. And this Barbie was just another one of his hobbies, albeit as his lawful wedded wife. All right, here you go. Molly, drink some water and calm down. I understand your condition, and I believe you don't know anything because you don't know anything, because you can pin the murder of my husband and his son on me. Oh no, really? That's out of the question. I'm well aware that you and your friend have nothing to do with this. So here's my card. The investigator took out a business card and put it on the coffee table. If you remember anything, please call me at any time of the day, and I will also keep you in the loop. He gently stroked her shoulder and left the room. There was nothing for him to do. After all, it was already clear that Molly did not benefit from the death of her husband, nor did she benefit from the death of her son. And if there was a benefit, then get to the bottom of it. Igor, what's our investigator? Walked into the office and looked at his partner. Noah, nothing. Just questioned Camille, the wife's friend. Yes, I realize it's nothing. Camille, good evening. Actually, not so good evening. I'm Senior Investigator Kotov. I understand you can't say anything about the essence of the questions asked. And the investigator looked at the short interrogation report. Yes, you understand, Mr. Investigator. We ate and drank from the same table. Everything was fine. And then the men started choking. I don't know why, but I called an ambulance immediately. I thought they were both epileptic. No, it was poisoning. And I found out who poisoned them. It gave her an electric shock, but she tried to pull herself together. But Molly and I ate and drank what the men ate and drank. And if we wanted to poison them, there'd be 4 dead bodies, not 2. Camille, you better calm your friend down. I see you're a girl of stronger character. We'll be on our way. There's nothing more for us to do for now. Try to calm down and get some sleep. I'll call you tomorrow. Camille nodded her head and did not say anything further, afraid to give herself away by a word or a question, even by a simple movement, a hand or a facial expression. Half an hour later, the house that had previously been full of life and laughter was empty. Yes, mother. Here she remained practically the sole and full mistress in the house. Camille was inwardly jubilant that she could so easily and simply put her simple genius plan into action. So it's you, Camille. You, Molly, couldn't say a word. Her friend did it all on her own and behind her back without even telling her. What if it had been her husband or stepson? What did you think? It was our plan. And it all worked out just like we wanted it to. Nobody even noticed. And you played it so natural. And Camille hugged her friend and patted her on the back. But Molly, not knowing why, pushed her away and ran to her bedroom, flooding her with tears. But also a fool. Run, run. You'll thank me 100 times later. If not, I'll report everything to the investigator. I'll say I ordered her husband's murder. Camille carefully took the investigator's card and tried to memorize the number. She did not touch her friend. She realized that she was still hysterical and could not react adequately to her words. Let you cry. She'll get drunk. We'll talk tomorrow. I should eat and drink myself. It's Christmas. When else can I sit at a table like this? Molly, don't be silly. Come out here and talk to me. But all Tommy got in response was silence, coffin-like and ringing at the same time. It made her uncomfortable, and it seems the girl threw a warm blanket over her shoulders, turned on the electric fireplace, poured herself brandy in a puffed glass, and sat down in the once legal chair of the already former master of the house. Believed that Stephen would not survive the poison scarf. Mason died instantly, and this one's still breathing. He's hanging on for dear life. I wonder how long he'll last. A long time. Molly's voice sounded so suddenly that Camille's hand trembled, and the expensive brandy spilled out onto the open fire and sparks flew into the room. Molly, I see you've come to your senses already. That's good. Have a drink with me in honor of Christmas, Camille. Do you really think it's a good time for a drink? And you're not embarrassed by the fact that it's only been a couple hours since you... Yes, I poisoned your husband and stepson, that's all. Notice, my dear, on your tip. And so let's not argue. You wanted it, and you got it. What's wrong? It's not the way you wanted. But I'm sorry. Whatever you had the brains and the money for. Molly stood in front of her friend in the doorway and clenched her hands into fists. She herself, not realizing why she was so angry. After all, there really was a pact between them. It was done. And that Stephen is still alive. But that's a matter of life or death. Camille, I'm sorry. I guess it pisses me off that you didn't tell me this was gonna happen today. That's what's freaking me out. Molly was also not a knave fool and understood perfectly well that Camille had got some solid dirt against her, and in case of something, she would easily give it to the police. Or look and will press all her life with dirt. But we'll see about that. Sweetie, don't fall into your own trap. Well, we have to make peace for now, and then we'll see. There are more important issues. All right, come on, Poor. We have to turn everything in, you see. That investigator is going to fight tomorrow. What are we going to tell him? What we said today. Not a word more, not a word less. I hope my friend won't let us down. Or remind you why we did all this together. I emphasize, together. All right, let's have another drink. I need to get drunk tonight. Molly poured himself a glass of whiskey and took 3 big gulps of scalding. The liquid flowed down her throat in a hot wave. No taste and flavor, as they show in the movies. Only the hot stream burns the temples, and all Camille looked at her friend attentively. And she became afraid, not because she was drinking, but because in such a drunken frenzy she might say something unnecessary. By the way, where did you go with those scarves? Molly just now remembered the weapons, the murders. Don't worry about it. They're hanging on the chairs over there. Molly just wanted to reach up and throw them in the fireplace. Somehow she immediately slapped her arm. Are you out of your mind? Leaving evidence like that against us? Don't you dare touch that. Or do you want to follow Mason to the afterlife or the emergency room? I'd like a table next to you. There's still poison on them, but it'll wear off soon enough. There'll be nothing left of him like a magic pumpkin by midnight. Let him lie on the chairs over there for now. You're sure? I could hear a note of distrust and doubt in my friend's voice. Are you? Or do you know better than me the chemistry and all the plant poisons? I don't think so. Oh, baby. Just take my word for it. And Camille took a sip of the expensive drink with a businesslike look. She did know that poison was unstable in the air, and soon there would be no trace of it on her clothes. That was why she wore the prescription just before leaving her house and poured the residue into the toilet. But what confused her was that it didn't work on Stephen the way she wanted it to. Maybe the do's and don'ts. Mason, you went straight to the creator. But this one, look, he made it. They took him to the emergency room. God forbid he makes it. Molly saw that her friend was thinking about something for a reason. Yeah, Molly, here's the thing. Don't tell me it didn't go according to plan. That's right. Mason, your stepson, went straight to God. Stephen, apparently, was a little tougher. He ended up in the emergency room. You're telling me he's gonna make it? I don't think so. It'll take time for the doctors to find an antidote to whatever got into his system. And even if he doesn't die, you're gonna have to decide on the spot, aren't you? Camille, and how do you envision that? Tell me something. You go to the hospital first thing tomorrow to check on your husband, like a decent and loving wife, and watch on the spot. And then you tell me, well, Molly took a sip of brandy and nodded her head. Emotions somewhat moved to the background, giving way to logic. Molly realized that since they had started this case, they had reached the halfway point. It was worth finishing it finally. And maybe it was a good thing that Camille hadn't said anything to her, but had organized and conducted the whole thing herself. Then she would not be suspected. If possible, it would be worth it to dump it on the other person and kill two birds with one stone to get rid of the potential heirs and her compromised friend. Okay, will you come with me? Molly really didn't want to go to the hospital alone. I think I should come with you. At least I'll find out from the doctors what they know and what they've done. And then it's home on the brain. What to do with all the information we have. Then let's do it at home. I'm going to bed. Do you know where your room is? Camille nodded her head and didn't bother to answer her friend even the trivial thing, did she? Why would she want to be quiet right now? Just to enjoy the sight of the fire and the sounds. The snippets of howling logs in the fireplace. The taste of expensive cognac that she certainly couldn't afford. Lucky friend, Camille thought, listening to Molly's footsteps and mentally imagining herself in her place. But I'm sorry, Camille shadows Molly, and you certainly can't have all this wealth. Still, I can get half of it from an already rich heiress, so to speak, for my silence and complicity. The next morning, the girlfriends called a cab and drove to the hospital, where they took Stephen to the emergency room, where they took Mason's body. Molly didn't even know, and they didn't even bother with the question. Why would she need it? If anything, there is a manager, their friends and doctors. Let them deal with it. But it worried her. After all, she had never worked with poison brought back from vacation before, so she wasn't quite sure if the doctors would find its residue in Mason and Stephen's bodies or not. But thank God, it was all right for her. Molly, good afternoon. You know, we have wonderful news. We were able to stabilize your husband's condition. So we can say that that's a success in the situation we're in right now. What about my husband? He fell out of his chair yesterday, choking, just like Mason. I don't understand what could have happened. It was probably me. But so far, we can't figure out what the compound is or what antidote to use. Our doctors have tested the tissues and blood of your stepson Mason, but have been unable to establish anything, as well as in the tests of your spouse. The doctor threw up his hands. I'm sorry. Started fawning over Molly, who had been doing all this time, looking grieving and half-trapped. Doctor, what can I do? Molly looked at the doctor carefully and shook his hand sympathetically. There's nothing. There's nothing even we can do. Your stepson's body will be taken by Stephen's management company, and he'll take care of the funeral. And you can pray for your husband's speedy recovery. Molly nodded her head, and leaning her head on the side, the doctor said quietly, "Here is my phone number." And she handed him her card. "If anything, call, and I will periodically visit my beloved husband." The girl turned around and slowly walked to the exit. She also stood near Stephen's room, looked at him, and quietly turned around and went to the exit. She had heard and seen enough, and that pleased her. So the doctors had found nothing and could do nothing. Just as the local shaman had told her, Camillus was walking down the corridor, and a vicious smile played on her face, predatory lionesses, and everyone who saw her simply looked away. There's not much of a psyche going on. Already in the car, Molly looked carefully at her friend and quietly asked Camille, "What do you think?" "Nothing, it's fine. And they didn't recognize me." "That's good. It means they can't find an antidote. But I don't like the fact that Stephen's in a coma. Means the poison didn't fully affect him. Or the dose was low. Do you have any more of that poison? No. Everything I brought back from Bali has already been used on your husband and Stepson's scarf. Now we can only hope he doesn't come out of his coma. But he may not. A day, a year, a decade. He could. And imagine, people can be in comas for 20 years, but I can't wait that long. Don't do anything yet. Wait, and then this. And then you bribe the doctor to take him off the ventilator, and that's it. What's there to think about? Or should I teach you how to be and what to do? And Molly, it's okay that I practically did everything myself. It's okay that it's my husband who you ordered for me. Because Molly, we're real gangster partners now, and believe me, we're in this together. And if anything, we're going down together. Molly was shaken by her friend's words, but she realized how right she was. But what if Camille suddenly told the investigator everything? Although on the other hand, her words against Molly meant nothing. The agreement was verbal. And those scarves were a gift from Camille. So she could just relax and move on with her life. But Molly's beautiful and well-fed life, as well as her meager gifts, handouts from time to time of small sums of money annoyed her. To Tom, she simply didn't know how to get more. And what could she rip off? None of them she was related to as mistress or wife could claim property like the late Mason. Because, shouldn't I tell Stephen all about it to myself, said Camille, sitting in the study of the former owner of the luxurious mansion. She stood up and walked across the 6th carpet, inviting we her footsteps. Yes, mahogany, antique editions, books, paintings are all good. But Stephen's in a coma. There's nothing he can do, so that's the point of this plan. And what's she gonna say? Sorry, man, I read my gift with plant poison. And you never died. But it's your wife's fault. Yeah, sounds stupid. But then again, no, it's not. Just going and telling him to a guy in a coma. Camille went to the window and looked out at the rose beds. Beautiful, of course. Maybe we should go to the hospital tomorrow, while Molly's asleep, and tell Stephen the truth. She'd once read in some scientific journal that even in a coma, a person could hear everything that was going on around them. Maybe that's how he comes back to life faster, or squint faster. Still, he can't see who's telling him all this stuff. And there. But Camille had no idea how close to the truth she was. The poison really hadn't taken its full effect on Stephen. Because of all that was happening around, all the words and actions of the doctors, the man heard and understood. He understood that at one moment Camille sat down on his bed and stroked his arm. Hello, Stephen. I hope you remember me. I'm Camille, a friend of your wife's. You remember I gave you and Mason 2 hand-knotted scarves. So she got out of bed and went to the window. She turned around and looked out. She wanted to say everything, but how could she? You see, Stephen, it's all right for me to be so familiar with you. Your wife who Molly poisoned you. Do you remember those 2 knitted scarves I gave you? Well, they were impregnated with plant poison. So your son died, and you're lying here in a coma, unable to say, do, or move a finger. The man heard Camille's sorrowful confession, and he wanted not only to cry, but to scream with all his lungs, which were now replaced by the artificial respiration machine. He lay there and could do nothing. And Camille was right. Not to say, not to do, not to lift a finger. But the higher powers will help me. Stephen thought. I've gotten out of worse than this. Stephen, just listen to me. Molly wants your money and your property. That's why she killed your son. She wanted to kill you, but I guess the poison didn't work right. And now you're left to fend for yourself. If you're trying, I think you can figure it out for yourself. I don't know how, but it's your internal family dispute. The girl stood up and walked out. Camille walked down the hospital corridor and didn't know why she had come here in the first place. Why she told everything like this, only at the same time accusing his own wife of all wrongdoings. But the deed was done. And then, as it happened, The phone rang in her pocket. Molly popped up on the screen. "Yeah, Molly, hi. What's up? Where are you?" Her voice sounded worried and concerned. "I thought I'd go shopping this morning." "Why?" "Yeah, I woke up in my house." "No. When are you coming?" "Maybe I'll drive into town, have lunch at that little restaurant." Molly paused for a second and thought, why not? It's enough to end Stephen once and for all. Getting his wife to kill him. I'm all for it. Go ahead, drive. I'll be there in an hour. Molly hung up the phone and thought for a moment. She would have enough time not only to make a reservation at the restaurant, but also to come up with another ingenious plan to finish Stephen off. And she already knew how to do it all on her own. If Stephen could simply be disconnected from the ventilator and done by the doctor's hands, and let Molly pay for it. Yeah, girlfriend, now you're really screwed on both your money and your spouse, and your estate. Well, I'll be damned if you're gonna get it too. Smiling to herself, she proudly threw off her head and walked down the corridor. She wanted to sing at her own brilliance and at the fact that so much in this life was going according to her plan. And at this minute, Stephen lay crying inwardly. He had heard all that his wife's friend had said and could not believe what he had heard. Could Molly have done this to him? The one he loved and idolized so much. Did everything she wanted. Bought her the best. Even his first wife, he never pampered like this. And this. Doctor, do you have to help me? Molly almost ran to the doctor who was examining her husband. Good afternoon, Mrs. Bracker. What's wrong? What can I do for you? I need to talk to you one-on-one. You realize I can do it in your office. All right, if you insist, come on in. The only thing is, Molly, I'd like you to wait for me for half an hour. I have to make my rounds. You know, we've got some heavy patients here. And then I'm all yours. And having escorted the visitor into the office, the doctor continued his usual daily rounds. About 40 minutes later, the doctor was sitting in his office. Across from him sat Molly, almost sobbing. Mrs. Bracker, please don't cry. I can't watch such a beautiful girl cry. Just call me Molly. You understand, doctor. It's been a week since I buried Mason and almost 9 days since the tragedy. But every night, my stepson comes to me and holds his hands out to me. Can you imagine that? The doctor knew the girl was under a lot of stress. But in that case, you'd have to involve a psychiatrist and a psychologist. His paraphysics are a little different. Molly, I understand you're worried about your husband, but there's nothing I can do. The human brain is a mystery. How long will he be in a coma? Even I can't say. The doctor threw up his hands, showing his helplessness. But at that moment, Molly opened her purse and took out a few wads of dollars and tied them with bank tape, unplugging it from the machine. Let him die is all that's required of you, and you'll get 5 times as much. Believe me, it's a lot of money, but you won't regret what you get afterward. And the doctor believed because he understood how great the reward was. Even what's on the table, it would be enough for him to live a year without poverty and a life with his family. What else is there to get? Molly, are you sure you know what you're saying? This is your husband, isn't it? I know he is. And I also know that it's in your power and my will to make sure that he passes away, so to speak, reunited with Mason on the other side of the world. Molly, but you're not dealing with an ordinary man. This is Bracker. They say the devil himself protects and guides him. I don't believe in God or the devil, so I just have to take legal rights as a widowed heiress, that's all. But the doctor's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. And immediately, without waiting for an answer, a nurse entered the room. She had no face on her. And apparently, she could justify her behavior. Igor Vasilievich, our patient is awake. Bracker has regained consciousness. It's a real miracle. Igor Vasilievich barely had time to cover the money with a magazine and immediately cast a glance at Molly. There was no face on Bracker's wife, and it wasn't that surprising. After all, it's one thing to order her husband's murder, and another thing when he came to his senses. Molly thought the same thing. For from that moment on, her plans were ruined. But what followed was something no one expected. Quickly into the room. "Molly, are you with me?" "Yes, of course I am." "I mean, it really is such a miracle. My husband practically came back from the dead. The doctor and the nurse were walking fast enough, and Molly was practically on her feet. And how could she not be worried? You never know what's going to happen next." But then it did. "Doctor, good afternoon." Stephen looked at the doctor and the nurse, and his gaze fell real in the corridor, and watched from behind the glass at him. "Molly, probably call the police, and have my wife come in here. I have a statement to make." "Stephen, are you sure you need the police right now?" "Yes, in principle. You as a doctor and here is a nurse as a witness. You can record my words, or rather, statement, pleas in my death, or rather, a failed attempt to kill me and the murder of my son. Blame my wife Molly and her friend Tom. I don't remember her last name." "Do you know Molly's last name?" The nurse gave the doctor a quick glance, and when he nodded, she left the room. She gestured down the hall to Molly's room, and without waiting, she rushed to the post to answer the phone. Nurse Victoria had not expected such a turn of events in this tangled story. Although, on the one hand, the wife's attempt to become a widow is a classic of the genre, while she called the police in the ward in full swing, there was a conversation, or rather, how to say, a silent battle between Stephen and Molly, witnessed by the doctor. "Molly, is there anything you want to tell me?" The look in her husband's fallen gray eyes trilling into her eye sockets. "No, but only that I'm glad you're awake like this, and it's a credit to Father. Stephen, I went to the temple, but the one near us, and I ordered a service for my repose." Stephen said it so loudly that Molly and the doctor jumped on the spot. "Stephen, don't talk nonsense. Please, I didn't ask for any repose, just for your health. And don't look at me like that." "Molly, how should I look at you? I've been told by a higher power that my murder is yours." "That's not the point, and don't even think about arguing." "Stephen, how do you figure that?" "Well, I hope you haven't gotten rid of those 2 scarves Tom gave you for Christmas." And then Molly had the thought that Camille had told him everything. But how could she? That bitch. She knew she'd take it. Yes, she'd tell her husband. But even if she did, how could he hear? After all, according to the doctors, he was in a coma the whole time. These thoughts rushed rapidly through the girl's mind, but Molly was not as experienced as her husband, and all this was reflected on her face. "So I'm right." Stephen's voice was no longer so loud, but even in the silence of the room, it sounded like a judgment. "Don't even think about running away. The police have already been called." "So what?" And then 3 investigators in civilian clothes and 2 uniformed policemen entered the room. Among them was Noah, also familiar to Molly, an investigator who looked at the woman carefully and without saying a word. He took the handcuffs out of his pocket and twirled them in front of her nose. "Well, Mrs. Bracker, shall we confess?" She was no longer Mrs. Bracker, but just Molly Williams, who had so cleverly managed to get under my side. But I had underestimated her stupidity, greed, as well as Tony's cunning. Good thing it all came out in such an unexpected way. Stephen tried to raise himself on his elbows, but his strength was not yet sufficient, and he returned to his former position with a heavy sigh. The doctor wanted to help, but the man raised his hand and stopped him. "Not worth it, doctor, Mr. Investigator. I take it." And he looked at the men in civilian clothes. "Yes, that's right. I'm in charge of your case, no. Remember the old Soviet movie?" "Yeah, same rank." "Captain Stephen, I'm glad you've come back to life. But you're weak. Maybe we shouldn't say anything yet. Testify. Any court might question it later." "They certainly won't. You take my word for it. You will first detain my ex-wife and escort her to a separate room. And I'll tell you everything in detail." The investigator looked at his colleagues, who stood in bewilderment and looked warily at each other. And what to say? After all, everyone realized that he was dealing with the omnipotent Gakjim, who was not only in the government offices, but also had connections in the world of reputable thieves and criminal lawmen. But the investigator realized that without Stephen's testimony, he was out of a job. This is a highly sensitive case. He nodded, and two surgeons instantly took Molly under their arms and led her out into the corridor. The doctor followed them, showing them where they could take Bracker's ex-wife. "So, colleagues, send someone to the house of this Tony's friend. I understand she's involved in this case too." "Yeah, you're right. I think you have her address. I mean, you were definitely at our house and took a statement." The investigator nodded his head and looked at his colleague. Professionals understood each other without words, and while the detention was being prepared, Tony Stephen lay on the bed with closed eyes and gathered his thoughts. The very decision to hand his wife over to the police had not been easy for him, but he realized that he could not go on like this. If they stayed together, Molly and Tanya would come up with another clever revenge plan. And then his wife's friend wouldn't be so stupid as to tell him everything. "Noah, my wife's friend Camille told me all about my poisoning when I was in a coma. But don't think I'm not stupid or crazy. I was unconscious, but I heard everything. And there's a security camera in every ITU room. You can see when Camille came to see me. Plus, you can hear everything she told me from her. Just by having a lip reader, if she's on camera, it's easy for him to read everything she told me. She thought I couldn't hear anything. That's why I was so candid. There are cameras." The investigator looked at the doctor, who had returned to the room. "Yes, there are, and the tapes are kept. So it shouldn't be too hard to get a video of your wife's friends. Excuse me, ex-wife's visit. In terms of cameras, we have quality cameras with wide angle and German optics. So I think it will be possible to lip-read what was said." "That's good, so I won't recount everything now. I don't have the energy, but I'll summarize it briefly. Have your Argyle go to my house and find 2 scarves, white and gray, out of the ground. It was a gift from Camille. But let them be careful. The threads are impregnated with some exotic poison she brought back from Bali. I don't know what kind of poison, but the man stopped for a moment and licked his lips. Yeah, coming out of a coma is like coming out of a long binge. Your throat is drying up, your head spinning. It's hard to breathe too. Stephen, you should probably rest," the investigator said. "You have basically told us enough. So from now on the work will be strictly for us. If anything is necessary, we will clarify." "Yes, I guess we will. Just tell me something, doctor. My son is dead. Stephen, you take heart." But his death was easy. The man turned away from the window, and a stingy male tear trickled down his cheek. "Why should I be surprised? After all, he lost not only his wife and his time, but also his son, everything that kept him in this world." His heart was pounding frantically, and everything swam before his eyes. But Stephen realized that he had only revenge and nothing else. After all, why had the higher powers pulled him from the other world and brought him back here? Stephen turned his head and looked at the doctor, who was standing in his room taking readings. "Doctor, what would you do? Are you looking for encouragement, or do you want to know if your decision was right? I just want your opinion. I don't know. My wife and I have 2 kids, and even if she did, I wouldn't press charges for the kids. And that bitch killed my son, you understand?" "I understand, Stephen. And if I judge from your position, then may I not answer your question?" Tolia nodded his head. After all, the doctor's lack of answer spoke for itself. How could one denounce his wife, who had borne him 2 children? If in Molly's place had been his hope, he might never have denounced her. But the situation was just the opposite. The doctor left the room, promising to check on him in an hour. And Stephen lay with closed eyes and thought how to live now with this realization that he was betrayed by close people. What loved ones? Just fellow travelers in my life who needed my money. It's a good thing that neither Nadia nor her parents lived to see this moment. And then from the street, Stephen heard the church bells chiming, playing a melodious melody, calling the faithful to the evening service, and whether not to go to a monastery, or smiled at the thought. Yes, he would go to a monastery, though he had many sins, and tomorrow, maybe even more. But it was at these moments that Molly and Tom were already being interrogated. For everyone on the investigative team understood a very complicated crime. It is a crime involving a diplomat and actually a criminal authority. Therefore, they could not just let it go. And they didn't have to let it go. Both women pleaded guilty immediately. Molly was the first to do it, then Camille, who actually got nailed. Video from Camille's ICU. You do realize, as a chemist, that the human brain is an unexplored organ. Even if you thought Stephen couldn't hear you, you could read the lips of everyone sitting behind that security camera screen. And I don't have to read to you now what you said out loud in Bracker's room. I don't have to read what you said out loud in Bracker's room, but almost shouted at the investigators who dragged her out of her office in front of the whole staff and forced her into a dark car with tinted windows and brought her here. If you know everything, why do you need my testimony? For the record, although you have every right not to testify against yourself, I think you're familiar with that rule. Camille didn't say anything. What to say now? She could only tell herself how stupid she had been to go to Molly's husband's room and shit all over herself. The investigator, who read the thoughts on the woman's face, understood that. Although on the one hand, the investigator understood perfectly well that often people are characterized by such rash actions that come out sideways, where it is necessary to sign. Camille understood perfectly well that now she could not get away, and cooperation with the investigation could ease her fate. What's in it for me? A lot depends on who was the organizer and who was the actual perpetrator. And I'm guessing your role in this poisoning is the executor. And then it dawned on her that she might not escape from the clutches of the investigators, but she could significantly reduce her sentence. She threw a quick glance at the investigator and began to say, "You see, it was Molly who put me up to it. Promised me a position, a manager in her house, money only on condition that I would send her husband away, but I would not just send him away, but so that no one could identify the poison. You understand? Before New Year's, she gave me a trip to Bali, but the locals there showed me a poisonous plant, and you decided to use it. Please note, Mr. Investigator, that was Molly's idea. It was her idea for the poison-soaked scarves, by the way. She kept telling me you couldn't buy an expensive gift for my husband and son, but a personalized scarf would be perfect. But I repent to her promises. Besides the position, manager, what did she promise you? Mr. Investigator, I'll tell you everything, but you tell me what I'll face." Camille belittling. She looked at the investigator, who was rubbing his pen and thinking about her question. No, of course. Camille could not go as an organizer of this murder, because in any case she will go on the case as an executor, and it is already a lesser term. You see, Camille, you are not the organizer in this case. But since we have one dead body and one attempted murder, you'll still get time. Molly will go down as an organizer, and that could be life in prison. Camille clamped her hands over her mouth and almost shrieked at the whole office. No, spare her. She doesn't want to go to a life sentence. But the investigator decided to put even more pressure on Molly Gakjan's friend. I've stated my opinion, but you understand, Camille. The sentence itself is only half of the case. You know very well who Bracker is. You realize that if you do it right, you still have a chance to get out of prison in the prime of your life. And the wrong way. The crime lords can avenge you for their comrade. Camille bit her lips nervously. She was feverishly pondering the investigator's words. She knew perfectly well that if the criminal authorities found out that she had caused Mason's death and the tragedy with Stephen, she would not live for 24 hours in a cell. What can I do to prevent a tragedy? You have the right idea, Camille. And one, tell me everything from the beginning in detail. And believe me, I'll take the officer's word for it, and I'll make sure Molly's guilt is taken into account. Maybe even get you off the hook, although I can't guarantee it. Of course, I'll try to make sure your sentence is either suspended or minimal. Thanks for that. Camille breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that she could get out of this very story, into which she had been drawn by greed and the desire for easy profit. Camille looked away. She realized that her future depended on how well she was going to get it right. "You can guarantee me that if I do go to jail, I won't be killed in the dungeons. I'll do my best." And the investigator was as honest with her as possible, although as a professional he knew perfectly well how unrealistic it was. To conceal anything in the criminal world, especially related to Stephen, was impossible. It's like hiding cheese from a mouse, which will find the treat by smell. But it was worth a try. "You tell it like it was, and I'll try to get it on the record." And the investigator supported his position in court, but that didn't help Tony much. The court sentenced her to only 5 years in prison for aiding and abetting murder and attempted murder. But even that sentence, she was glad. After all, it was not the term the court had given Molly, 18 years for the murder of her stepson and the attempted murder of her husband for personal gain. Molly sobbed and struggled behind the bars in the courtroom, tearfully praying and complaining that her friend Camille had put her up to it. But the jury and the judge were adamant. "What can you say about killing such an honorable man? Molly, you say you were beaten up by Tonya. But how could she influence you? How could she sway you to do such a thing?" "But you know, Molly, I'm sorry, but I've seen a lot of things in my legal practice, and I've seen a lot. In your situation, though, I just don't understand. How could she influence you? A smart and beautiful girl. Confuse? No. Bribe her? No, she's not related to you. She doesn't owe you money. Why did you do it? Stephen would have left you some part of his inheritance, even if not all of it." Molly only lowered her head and, burying herself in her palms, burst into tears. The girl realized that at her age, 18 years in prison is a sentence, and the most painful. What will happen when she gets out? No family, no apartment, no girlfriends, no husband. And her age is not the same. It's her beauty that makes her public. It remains only to go to the monastery, to beg for alms on the porch. This was understood by Stephen, who at the time of the trial of his ex-wife has already come out of intensive care and was undergoing rehabilitation in a private clinic. At first, the man wanted Molly to be put on the airplane, the first cell to local comrades to do with her. But after thinking, he gave up this idea, asked the criminal authorities not to touch her. "But how can it be? She killed your son, attempted to kill you, and therein lies my brilliant plan for revenge. I realize that Molly will be fine in the zone with some guard or doctor. And believe me when I tell you, it'll be years away. So in." And Stephen twisted his arm, showing that Molly's sentence might not be what the court had determined. And every criminalist understood that. "And if I could ask you for one thing, bring me to the sentencing hearing." "Stephen, what do you want?" asked him by a Turk, an old friend of his. I honestly still feel guilty about that advice to get married and not to put a cross on my family happiness. And it turns out, what? "Jacob, but you didn't give me Molly, and you didn't marry her. It was my decision." "That's true. But I still feel bad for you, man. And right now I don't think you should go to Tarek's trial. I want to look into the eyes of the bastard who killed my son." He nodded, and without saying anything, went out of Stephen's room. The very next day, when Molly was to announce the verdict, under the hospital stood a car with tinted and bulletproof windows, and waiting for Stephen. Tarek himself sat behind the wheel and nervously nodded his fingers on the steering wheel. He, of course, did not like the very idea of a friend driving to the trial. But as a father, he understood his condition. Tor opened the passenger side door and sat down next to the driver, looked at his old friend, tried to squeeze out a semblance of a smile. "Well, friend, let's drive. You're my driver today, and I'm your passenger. No, you're a crazy friend who needs my support. And the rest of you, don't worry about it. I made sure the verdict was announced without the ears of reporters and profit seekers. But keep your cool. Do you doubt otherwise?" The great Mongol Jacob shook his head and gave a gasp. Indeed, when Stephen entered the courtroom, there was no one there except the prosecutor and the secretary. "Yes, what money can do. All it takes is a coin call, and everything falls into place. A loyal court and no reporters. But the one in the courtroom creaked zeros. The massive oak doors. The man turned his head and saw first the escorts, and then Molly, who was being led in handcuffs, quietly walking across the parquet floor. She was walking with her head held high. But when her gaze fell on Stephen, Molly commanded and began to gulp nervously for air. "Get me a doctor. I'm not feeling well." And it wasn't stage. The girl's face was whiter than the wall. She didn't expect to see her ex-husband in the courtroom. Her lips were ringing and her legs were shaking. The escort was not weak, both physically and morally. He quickly took her under his arms and escorted her to the bench. "Sit here. I'll call a doctor." He radioed for a doctor to come to room 13. Stephen stood still. He looked carefully at the once beloved woman who only wanted his money. The man slowly approached the bars and, standing a couple steps away, spoke. "Here, Molly, we meet. How are you doing behind bars? And you thought the other side was good? No, I'm alive. And don't you worry, you'll live to do your time. I'll even send you packages, so you won't starve." "Stephen, how dare you say that? It's all Camille's fault. She definitely talked you out of it. And it's all on me. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't your fault. You let me die. We never would have done anything without you. You'll be in the same colony. Let your friend remind you of me for a few years. And when she gets out, will she send you letters for packages? I don't know. I don't think she'll have enough money to support you, but I'm certainly taking care of her. After all, I owe your friend. She told me about your perfidy. What kind of poison did you give me? You wouldn't dare take Camille into our home." Molly choked with despair. Her friend had essentially outplayed her. "No, honey, I can, and I will. She'll help me around the house, and I think she'll serve me like a faithful dog. And sometimes, I hope, she'll tell you in letters what's going on at home, how I'm living. You want to know, don't you? You don't dare do that." The girl's eyes poured with anger. Stephen did not say any more. Smiling, he walked away and sat down on a seat in the front row. He had said what he wanted to say. And in time. For at that minute a doctor and 3 judges entered the courtroom, whispering nervously about something. But when they saw Stephen in the courtroom, they stopped their debate abruptly. "Where is the patient?" The doctor looked at the girl and realized that the one most likely increased pressure will have to give an injection. "You please, you see she's being escorted in. I'm not going behind bars. I need to take her blood pressure and give her an injection." The escort looked at the chief judge, and when he nodded in agreement, he led Molly out of the bars. "Well, the girl's blood pressure is high. I'll give you that." The doctor took out syringes, a needle, alcohol, and an ampoule of the drug from his backpack. He started to prepare the injection. "Come on, girl, please put your ass in front of me. Let's give you an injection." When all the medical procedures were completed, the judge called the doctor and quietly asked, "We can continue the session?" "You know, I wouldn't do that if I were you. If time and circumstances permit, reschedule it. The patient has really high blood pressure. She doesn't need any unnecessary stress right now, unless you want to bring her to an early demise. The judge has decided to adjourn for 3 days. I'm mentally berating myself for authorizing Stephen Bracker's visit. But what's done is done. I mean, in that situation, it was unrealistic to refuse such a man. After all, his wife was on trial, albeit a suspended ex-wife. But on paper, she's still his legal wife. The judges postponed the trial. The verdict was never announced. But Stephen rode in the car back to the hospital and rejoiced. His son was embarrassed, if only a little. And Molly, they'll get what they deserve. Should I or shouldn't I take her in? No, Stephen, are you serious? In terms of what the man didn't immediately understand the question. But in terms of taking her in, I can. You're a smart man, but do you think I'm a complete idiot? No, I'm sorry. But you told Molly so convincingly in the courtroom that even I believe you. That's good. Then she believed it too. So the plan worked, about how she's gonna live her life after she's done time. Let's believe it. People like that don't go to waste. But maybe not at home. But your ex-wife, she's not gonna last. I don't know. Unless prison and local comrades teach her how. But trust me, I'm not in the mood for that right now. Mongol was driving. He wanted to ask his friend what he would do next. But the question wouldn't come out of his mouth. Why are you so quiet? Friend, you're judging. I'm not God to judge. You better tell me what you're gonna do next. I don't know. Right now, I guess I'll have to get healthy first, then clean up my son's grave. And then maybe I'll travel. My late Nancy loved to travel, but I guess it wasn't her destiny. To see Paris. What else did she want to see? I thought you were in Paris. You told me so yourself. Believe me, it wasn't the same. Now I think I'm gonna buy a backpack and a tent and a professional camera and travel. At least let there be pictures of me. If I couldn't keep my only son safe. And tears ran down Stephen's cheeks. He didn't understand how this could happen. After all, always considered himself strong and restrained, such that will definitely not show his emotions. And now here it is. You cry, my friend, cry. It's okay. You don't have to be embarrassed. And he took a sharp turn toward the waterfront. They shouldn't be going anywhere right now. They just wanted to stand and admire the water and nature. Having stopped on the embankment, Mongol got out of the car and looked around. It was a beautiful place. A gazebo, swans, a cafe nearby. Stephen, come on, go outside. Let's go help their feet in the river to feed the swans. And grab a bite to eat. What's at the local diner? It's been a long time since I've just sat around eating cheburiks and drinking from a big mug of beer. You're a persuasive man. Stephen wiped his tears and got out of the car. He took out a bottle of water and handed it to his friend. I need to wash my face on my hand. I don't want to go into an establishment like this with red eyes. Let them recede a little, and then already on the beer, and streaks in the face with cool water. Stephen and Mongol stood on the shore and watched the swans swimming gracefully, how they sit and chortle. Between themselves on the shore, fishermen with fishing rods, how children run around in the sand. Life goes on, despite the grief of every person in this world, big and small. So let's go for a beer, friend, and let the world wait. Turning around, they walked into a local establishment and were pleasantly surprised. Everywhere is clean and well thought out. The interior is good wooden furniture. Appetizing smells were coming from the kitchen. A smiling Uzbek in a white apron deftly swept the crumbs off the counter and nodded his head in greeting. Good afternoon, dear ones. What do you want? Today you can order delicious cheburiks. Wow. And how do you deal with beer? Better in the city. Here is a choice, and the Uzbek showed his hand to the gingerbread sticking out of beer barrels behind his back. Then 3 cheburiks to your taste and a beer each. Also to your taste, sir. And my friend and I will each take a hand and take a seat at that window over there. And the Mongol pointed to the outermost table. The order was fulfilled quickly, and the dish was excellent. Despite the small appearance of the place, the men chatted over a glass of beer like good old friends, and everyone understood that even in a difficult situation, life does not end. You have to do something. Love every minute of life, even if it takes away your loved ones. Toward evening, when both of them had slowed down, they went outside, and the Mongol called his driver. Stephen, he'll take you home. And if you need anything, you call me. Thanks, man. You've already done everything I needed to do, and I'll tell you here. And now I realize one thing. You know, that friend nodded questioningly, and Stephen, smiling, told him to just live. I sat there and caught myself thinking that I still wanted to live. For all that I've lost pretty much everything, but you haven't lost yourself. Yes, I have. I haven't lost myself, and thank you for being there for me. Why don't we take a trip to the Great Mongolian Steppes? I'll show you my land. Learn to saddle young horses, hunt with falcon, and then drink tea on the threshold of the yurt and admire the cold sunset. Or he smiled and looked at the bright sun, which slowly sloped behind the crowns of trees, and imagined for a moment the picture described by his friend. It was breathtaking. He looked at Jacob and nodded his head. Let things take their course now. Life had indeed set things right. Molly was given 18 years in prison, then 5, but they didn't serve their terms in full. Then we were already 2 years and a half out for good behavior, and Molly really managed to settle in while incarcerated. As expected, Stephen managed to fall in love with the doctor in a year, safely married him. In 3 to give birth to a child and get out, not just for good behavior, but on a fabricated diagnosis. But all this did not bother Stephen, who completely withdrew from diplomatic and criminal affairs, immersed in traveling and exploring the wild corners of the planet. And what is most surprising, it was in this that the man found his solace. Stephen was soothed by ancient ruins, forgotten cities. They reminded him of the frailty of life. That's why his photos came out realistic. People seemed that they themselves were in these lands, sighed the aroma of exotic dishes, looked at people before the outer civilizations, and only organized unique photo exhibitions. Stephen, what is your success? Once asked him a journalist at one of the exhibitions in America. The man thought for a moment and smiled. He had long ago found the answer to this question, but only now he came to the point of giving an answer publicly. You know, or rather you don't know, but in each of my photos I try to find an image of my son. It could be his favorite tree or flower, or a boy who looks like him. Or maybe a boy like my Mason was when he was young. They say your ex-wife killed him. That's true. Yes, she poisoned him. But I don't blame her greed. It's one of the vices of man. And I'm flesh and blood. I blame myself for not dying in his place. And there was silence in the hall, without collusion. All those who were at the exhibition in the hall stood up and bowed their heads in a sign of respect, not for Bracker's son, but just for the young man who left this world untimely. Stephen was touched and simply could not hold back the tears. But he did not want to show his weakness, so he simply thanked the audience and stood up and went backstage. Only now he realized that for the sake of people's memory, it is worth living on this planet, and let his son have a good time there on the clouds. And he still has a lot to do. He still has so many unrealized cases and projects.
Subscribe and click the bell.
Harry dialed Emily's number for the umpteenth time, but to no avail. She didn't answer. She'd promised to let him know when she got there, and not a peep. How could this be? Well, yes, his beloved was never distinguished by neatness and commitment, but in such a situation, he even called the airport. The plane he'd put Emily and her friend on had flown on schedule, landed safely, and after that, both girls had seemed to vanish. Neither one of them answered their cell phones. He didn't want to let his beloved go on this trip. He persuaded her to wait for his vacation and then fly together. But no, alone in a foreign country, because anything could happen. He rushed around the apartment for the second day, dialing Emily's number, then Emily, then her friend, but the answer was silence. Why do you keep looking for the fifth corner? At least go eat a proper meal. His mom called him irritated. How do you not understand? I'm worried. If something happened? The son replied. I see. It happened. The girls went out. What's so surprising? It was their first time out. What have they seen here but their shop? Not to mention their town. Well, they've gone out, and they're right to enjoy themselves. Why do you say that, Mother? Harry was snapping at me. Why should a man be suspected of every mortal sin? Who's talking about sins? I'm talking about going out in the ordinary sense. Sightseeing, swimming, sunbathing. It's all new, it's all different. It's not up to you, and rightly so. Let Emily have her fun. She'll be calmer from now on. They say that he who has not had a good time in his youth will go mad in his old age. Do you want that? Don't you know any other way of things? Does a man have to go out, either in his youth or in his old age? You don't know of any that don't go out at all. Harry was irritated, anxious, and then his mother said such things instead of calming him down. Of course, she hadn't liked Emily or Mary either, from the beginning, but that wasn't a reason to talk down to people. I know all about it. I never went out much. I never had time. And I'm not that kind of person, but things happen. Ethan in the front yard, he married his Kathy right out of high school. Everything seemed fine. In 20 years already had a second child, but in 40 she got a rash under her tail and went on a bender so that she forgot her husband and children. It's good that at 40, the children are already adults, but it can be worse. We have such a Clara at work. She told about her sister-in-law. You could listen to stories about Mom's friends and their relatives all day and night, but Harry was sick enough. What did he care about someone's sister-in-law? When his favorite girl disappeared somewhere, and where? In Turkey. They remembered the horror stories they'd heard somewhere about girls who'd been kidnapped and sold into slavery. It was Mary who confused her, dragged her off to some unknown place. In some ways, his mother was right. It was necessary to send this friend away at once, literally forbid to communicate with her. He thought, knowing perfectly well that it was useless to forbid Emily anything. They had met almost a year ago in the store where Emily worked, not in a store, but in a big supermarket. Harry had gone in there to get groceries and saw the girl arranging something else on the shelves. The way she did it, her actions reminded him of some kind of music, as if she were playing a harp, as if she were performing some kind of dance. Every movement was full of such grace, he could hardly take his eyes off the chiseled figure, which was not hidden by the ridiculous uniform. A glance at the face, and he realized he was lost. There are times when a girl's figure is beautiful, but her face is so bad. It can be the other way around, and her face was perfect, at least to Harry. He couldn't pass her by, so he went up to her and said, "How cleverly do you do that?" And he was surprised at his own determination. He'd never tried to meet a girl on the street or in a store. Of course, the girls he had 25 years old, there were, but they were former classmates, fellow students, that is, those with whom to get acquainted specifically was not necessary. Experience. The stranger replied cheerfully, turning to Harry and lighting him up with her smile. "And you live near here, I suppose? I've seen you before." Crazy. She had seen him and even remembered him. How could he have missed her? "Yeah, I used to come into this store a lot." "Yes, I'm in the next block. I come here, but why haven't I seen you?" "That's impossible. You can't be missed." Harry was really impressed. "I'm not always in the store. Sometimes I'm at the cash register, and there's a lot of them." "Emily, stop talking. You'll earn your remarks." Through a woman running past. "Oh, sorry." Harry realized. He took a jar from the shelf, pretended to look at it, and talked to the girl about the goods. "Are you guys so strict around here?" "What time do you work till?" "At 10 I finish, at 11 I leave, from the other side, and the service entrance." Without looking, said the girl, and turned around again, suddenly winked with a slightly slanted green eye. "We really can't talk during work. I'll meet you," said Harry, tossed the can into the basket, and headed for the checkout. Emily, then, is my one and only. He thought and had no other thoughts. It was only 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but he was ready to take a watch at the service exit, or better yet, to stand there in the store, watching Emily, guarding her from other men's gazes. But he had to take the groceries home, and it was ridiculous to be on the street or in the store in case they took him for a thief and Emily for a fool. No, he's an adult. He should behave like a grown-up, serious man. At home, Mom, sorting out the shopping, was surprised. Where are the carrots? He didn't buy any greens. What's the butter for? We have it. I'd asked you to buy chicken, but you bought some half-finished products. What should I do with them? You didn't buy rice either. And why did you buy sprat and tomato? Twirling the same can in her hands, the woman was annoyed. What am I going to make dinner out of? Your sprat. Mom, I really like sprat and tomato. Today I'll eat it for lunch. I don't need anything else. I'm sorry. Do you want me to go again? For the chicken and everything else? No, thanks. Sending you is a waste of time. I gave you the list. You're so stupid. But Harry wasn't listening. He went to his room and threw himself on the couch, holding the jar in his hands, which were touching Emily's hand, and lay there with a blissful smile, waiting for the time to pass. Peeking in the door, Mom, of course, guessed it. It was clear. He's in love. And what kind of sprat do you like? Tell me, please. Not a sprat, Mom, but the best girl. I'll introduce you soon, and soon we'll be married. That's how it is, and send them to the store, and instead of buying everything on the list, they will fall in love with a sprat and lie with it in their arms. The woman grumbled and went to the kitchen. Miranda, not that she was very worried about this behavior of her son. A grown man, what can I say? It was high time he fell in love and got married. But what kind of sweetheart did he find at the store? That store-bought dating never does any good. A friend of mine went to the store, and a man saw her, and they got married. How many years has he been tormented with her? And by the way, she's got a bride for her son, Abigail, a wonderful girl, beautiful and smart, a co-worker's daughter. Miranda's known her since she was a kid, just like the rest of the family, lovely family. But no, he went to this store, and who knows how this acquaintance will turn out. And it turned out that Harry met Emily after work. Alas, she did not come out alone, but with her friend, Mary, who was probably a pretty girl too, but who disliked him because she prevented him and Emily from really getting to know each other. But Mary apparently felt it was unnecessary and quickly left them alone together, and thank you for that. You must be tired. Harry asked, introducing himself. No, I'm very energetic, she answered cheerfully. And anyway, let's be on a first-name basis. We're not at a reception. The girl's cheerful mood relaxed Harry, and together they walked to her house, chatting casually. The young man learned that Emily, like her friend, came from a small town. They wanted to enter somewhere, but failed, so they had to get a job in a store. We didn't want to go home with nothing, but we didn't want to go home at all. There's nothing much to do there. We want to achieve something more, so in a year we'll probably prepare better and go to school. Or we'll figure something else out. We're not going to put the cans away until we retire. And we live in this house. We're renting a 2-person apartment on the 2nd floor. You see Mary's home. Why don't you come in? Harry, I'd love to come in, but Mary's there, and she's a chatty girl, so we can't be alone together. He didn't want to be alone with Emily, but he didn't think of anything intimate. No, he just wanted to be near her, to talk about everything, to learn more and more about her. Why don't we go and just sit somewhere? Harry suggested. I'm coming from work, and I need to get changed and clean up, and then it'll be too late, because I'm working tomorrow. But the day after tomorrow I'm off, then we'll go out, okay? So they began to meet on weekends, and when Emily worked, Harry, who worked until 6, met her in the evenings from work, always with flowers with some small but nice gift. Soon the guy already on Emily's rights, as a young man, unashamedly visited their rented apartment with Mary and the girl herself invited to his place. Emily's acquaintance with Miranda also took place. Oh, the potential mother-in-law didn't like her son's girlfriend, and not because she had another bride in mind for Harry. Not because Emily had any conspicuous flaws. She just didn't like it, and that was all, but the woman didn't express her complaints to her son. On the contrary, she praised the girl both in her eyes and behind her eyes, in conversation with Harry and her friends. Wonderful girl, and beautiful and modest, lives far from home, and does not hang around. Behaves decently, works officially, well, just fine. She still found one physical flaw in her favorite son, but she told not him about it, but her friend on the phone. Harry overheard his mom saying, "Yes, she is beautiful, but I look at people's hands first of all, and they are not beautiful. The palm is wide, the fingers are thick, short, some kind of claws, not hands." Harry heard him, but only grinned. He didn't think Emily's hands were ugly, but rather childlike, touching. Miranda did not give up trying to change her son's mind, but decided to act stealthily. She praised her son's choice and admired the girl's beauty, but she kept telling stories about her sons, allegedly her friends and coworkers. "Vanessa, what's going on at home? Her son was so clever and handsome, but he married a guest from some village. She had a baby, and then she got a divorce. Now she wants to take half the apartment from them, and she was such a nice girl, such a sweetheart." Harry was well aware of the implication. "Mother, Emily, and I haven't married yet. We haven't had children, so we're not going to divorce. Besides, she's not from the country, but from the city, a resort, by the way, where any apartment is more expensive than ours. I'm not saying anything about your Emily. I'm just telling you about what's going on at work. You and I have to talk about something. But what do we talk about? Not soccer, especially since you're not interested in it, but you could be interested in your beloved's relatives. That's very important too. How is it important? How could I possibly be interested in her relatives?" Harry was both amused and annoyed by such talk, but Emma wasn't interested either. She married someone who didn't remember her kinship, and now she's been offered a good job, and there are questionnaires and checks. And it turns out that this husband's entire family has been in prison 5 times, and now Emma will not see a good job. How's that for a turnaround? I don't like these turns. Emily had no one in jail, and she herself had no jail time, no lawsuits, and no apartments taken away from anyone. Leave me alone with your friends and their kids. Harry was already angry, in fact, and he didn't know much about his beloved's parents. He just wasn't interested. From her fragmentary phrases, he realized that her relations with her parents were rather complicated, and that upset the girl, and if that was so, then why bother with questions? As if they had nothing else to talk about still, as it was. Every meeting with Emily was a real holiday. She was so positive, so cheerful, so able to lift his spirits. If Harry feared anything, it was that someone would intercept. He had such happiness. Still, she works among people, every day in front of many men, but Emily did not give any reason for jealousy. On the contrary, it seemed that she was afraid of losing her boyfriend. This really raised the self-esteem of the young man, who had never considered himself such a dream for any girl. He wasn't trying to bribe the girl, to pay her financially for her attention, not at all. He saw that Emily was not the least bit self-serving. Yes, he was a well-to-do man, earning good money, but he had never heard the slightest hint of even the most trifling gifts from Emily. He himself was happy to give her gifts, genuinely pleased with her admiration and gratitude. Harry himself did not notice that his savings began to melt like sugar in boiling water. He did not skimp on expensive clothes for his beloved, nor on jewelry. When by Christmas the guy wanted to please Emily with a new branded handbag, and of course, not an empty one, he, after counting the money, realized that there was simply not enough money for a model worthy of his beloved. He had to turn to Miranda. "Mammy, can you lend me some money for a while?" "What's wrong?" The mother was even frightened when she heard the amount of money she was talking about. "You used to have money, didn't you?" "Where did it go?" "I had some and it surfaced, but I'll have more soon. Don't worry, I'll close a lucrative project soon." "Then what?" "Your Emily will be back, sucking you dry like a vacuum cleaner." "Mom, don't. Emily has never asked me for a dime. If you're sorry, don't give it to me. I'll find someone else to borrow it from, but it's not worth it to slander someone for nothing." "I'll give you the money." "I'll give you the money, of course, but think what you're doing. You are going to get married." "With what money?" "You'll have to buy everything for the bride and the celebration itself. The wedding will be in the spring. I'll still have time to earn so much." "Don't worry, please. I've never robbed you." Yes, they planned the wedding for spring because they had not yet applied for it, and there was no engagement, but Harry was already sure that he would get the consent, and the ring for that day had already been bought. It had cost a lot of money, but he couldn't tell his mother about it. Christmas was celebrated, and Emily was delighted with the gift. At the end of February, Harry finally proposed to her, got her consent, and very soon after this momentous event, Emily said that she was terribly tired of winter, frost, eternal darkness, and wanted to rest in Turkey. Harry was surprised at this statement. "How come without me?" "I have a vacation in April, and we planned the wedding for April. Then we'd go on a wedding trip together." "How are you going to go alone?" "Why alone? With Mary, she's on vacation too. Can you trust her with me?" "We're going for a couple of weeks, so we'll make it a honeymoon trip, like a bachelorette party or something." "I don't know what you're worried about." "You don't trust me, do you?" "Why wouldn't I trust you?" "I'm just scared for you. I don't know what's going on. But isn't it true that sometimes these things happen to single girls?" "No, I'm not letting you go. Let Mary go alone if she wants to." "What are you talking about?" "Anything can happen at home, and the ceiling can fall on your head." For the first time since we met, Emily sounded annoyed. "And anyway, I'm not asking your permission. I'm informing you. That's why I'm going now, before we get married. Otherwise, as soon as I become a wife, you won't let me go anywhere. Mary's already gone to get a trip, and now you're starting all of a sudden. You want to hurt my feelings before you leave." Harry didn't want that at all, and realizing that his beloved was going anyway, he decided that he shouldn't spoil her vacation. She was really tired, exhausted for the winter. Let her rest, sunbathe, gain strength and new impressions. And now Emily and Mary had gone away, and for the third day there was no news from them. How could this be? I mean, she knows I'm worried. At least send me a text to say everything's okay. I don't need anything else. If she comes, I'll give her a hard time. What if she doesn't? After a week of not knowing, Harry decided that something should be done because 2 people were missing. But first he decided to go to Emily's work. Maybe some bad news had gotten there that hadn't reached him for some reason. There, in the personnel department, he was given some strange information. On vacation? No, they both quit their jobs, got full pay, said they weren't coming back. I'm surprised you don't know. You're Emily's fiancé, aren't you? I must have misunderstood something, Harry muttered, and went to the house where the girls rented an apartment. The door was open, and some people were dragging tools and materials into the apartment. They were the owners, who said that Mary and Emily had paid them off and had moved out. And who are you to them? The landlady, An elderly woman asked. No one, an acquaintance, Harry replied. He realized that he really became, or maybe he was his Emily, a nobody. His mother, seeing her son's suffering, at first seemed to sympathize, comforted him, said that if something had happened, he would have been informed long ago, and then began to laugh. Well, has your sprat gone to the warm seas? Oh, son, I told you that these store acquaintances do not lead to anything good. I've been sitting on your neck for almost a year, pulling from you. All right, she didn't, you gave her gifts, and you gave her not a trifle. You dressed her, put her shoes on, hung her with gold. Who would refuse? You never gave your mother a silver ring in your whole life? Come on, I'm not scolding. You'd better keep quiet. My son was losing it. Don't rub it in, something must have happened. I think she found a richer patron, that's all. Maybe she went to her village, or where she's from. Maybe she lives in the next street. When you meet her with another man on her arm, then you can ask her what's going on. And I don't put salt on it, I put green oil on it. It'll sting at first, but it'll heal your soul wound quicker. Harry understood that his mother was right in some respects. He really knew nothing about his beloved and the one he wanted to tie his life with. Where was she from? Where were her relatives? Although if he had known, what would have changed? Well, he would have come, saw that she was not there, so what? Even if I had met her, I would have heard an indifferent answer. Would that make it any easier? What can you do? You have to move on. Miranda didn't hide her joy at the disappearance of her unwanted daughter-in-law. Cheer up, son. It's certainly a godsend. It would be much worse if you got married, had children, and she disappeared. And so, well, a year wasted and all right, forget it and wait for your happiness. It will not pass by. It was a little inspiring. Except that at the word happiness, Emily's sweet face came to mind, her cheerful laughter. Would he never see her again, his dear bride? Who could replace this girl? Who could not be better? And then my mother had a birthday, not an anniversary, because she immediately said that she would not organize a big party. Only her sister and her husband, her late father, her brother and his wife, and a couple of friends. And you and me, just 8 people, nothing special. We'll sit for a while and that's all, just to meet. We haven't seen each other for a long time. Instead of a couple of friends, only one came, but with her daughter, Abigail. Harry was already a little familiar with this girl. That is, his mom persistently wanted him to meet, and preferably marry, her daughter's girlfriend. He liked her a little, but not enough to marry her, and compared to Emily, Abigail was a loser, though she wasn't a bad-looking girl. She was very pretty, but her pretty head with its doll's face, its baby face, was crowned by a too fat body. Yes, she was such a nice fat girl, simple-minded, trusting, very homely. It is said of such people from childhood that they will be good masters, but did Harry need that? He needed Emily, fun, quick, unpredictable, and loving. And this Abigail, what? Yes, a good hostess. She's probably good at making soup. But loving? No, she hardly knows what that is. At table, of course, he was seated next to Abigail, told to look after her, and Harry dutifully offered her various dishes, served her bread, napkins. He did not know what to talk to her about, so they said nothing to each other except thank you and please. Then the men decided to go out on the balcony to smoke, and Abigail's mother suddenly jerked, obviously pushing her daughter under the table with her foot and making some significant grimaces. Abigail realized, "Oh, Miranda, I'm so grateful to you. Such a lovely evening, but I have a headache. Mom, should I go home?" I wanted to talk more. What's your hurry? Her mother was upset. I can walk home alone. It's not far. "It's late. It's getting dark. So I'll walk. I'd love to walk too," said Harry. He and Abigail went out of the house. He was about to go to his car, but the girl held him back. "Don't. You've been drinking." "I'd love to walk. It's such a beautiful evening. I'd love to get some air." And her hand slipped under the young man's elbow. "I'd love to walk too." Harry smiled, looking at that hand, unexpectedly very beautiful, white, with smooth skin, long, thin fingers and sharp, manicured nails, not at all like Emily, but Abigail was the opposite of his favorite. Well, if Emily was Emily, why not Abigail? We should get married anyway. It's high time she got married. Our mothers have married us off long ago, and we shall be a decent couple, and what's the matter? I've had love before, and I'll never have anything like that. It was uncomfortable to keep silent, so he decided to talk to Abigail a little. "You're probably just tired of sitting at this boring party, among people who are not old?" he asked with a smile. "Why not?" Abigail replied eagerly. "Your mother organized everything so well, and it's not so old that it's boring. It's just that I've got a bit of a headache. Do you do anything fun without your mom? You know, companies, friends, clubs," and immediately regretted his question. It's clear that Abigail is a homebody. What kind of clubs? And indeed, the girl mixed. "Well, with friends occasionally sit somewhere, although no, that I will lie. Not really I go somewhere and with someone to have fun, but I do not need it and do not need. I love my home. I love to read, watch movies, do crafts. I'm boring, aren't I?" "Why not?" Harry exclaimed quite sincerely. "Not at all. You're the right Abigail, the right kind of woman for life, for happiness, for family. I suppose that's what a woman should be. It would be worse if you were 25 and running around dancing. I'm already 26. Abigail sighed. "And no family. Maybe because I didn't go dancing, where would I have met? I work in a women's collective at school. At the institute there were mostly girls. They are all married already, have children, so with me they have no time to meet and no need. But sometimes I'm jealous." The girl spoke without a tear, without any bitterness, just telling me. Harry thought that she was not capable of strong emotions, and perhaps that was her good fortune. "It's just that my mom keeps trying to fix me up." Abigail grinned. "Here's to you, too. I realize my mom's been hinting for a while that you'd be a better choice. Why don't we just humor our moms and get married?" I said it, and I was scared. What if she said yes? No, I mean, she's a good girl. Maybe she's the best option, but what if Emily comes back? Abigail, as if reading his thoughts, grinned. "Aren't you afraid I'll say yes? I'm not going to say no, but I don't want to do it on the fly. I need to think about it, to talk, to get to know each other a little. Isn't that right? And if you change your mind tonight, I won't remind you, don't worry. I'll just consider it a joke. Here's my house. I'm not inviting you over. I'll come back later, okay? In the meantime, you can call me if you want to talk." "You're right, Abigail. You're so right. I'll definitely call, and we'll talk about everything else. Obviously, we're not going to register the marriage right away." That was the end of it. Harry did not go home at once. He decided to take a walk along the street, to wait for the guests to leave, to avoid questions, hints, and advice from older companions who had lived their lives and knew better. It was better to walk alone, to think without interference. About whom? About Emily, of course. He forgot about Abigail as soon as he said goodbye to her. He thought about his missing lover all the time and was horrified that Emily herself would never know, nor would she want to know how he'd lived all those months. And he'd lived like that, thinking about her all the time. Not about why or where she'd disappeared to, but just so he wouldn't see her, no matter who he talked to. His first thought was always to tell Emily. And now, too, as if he saw her in front of him and asked her mentally, "You'll come back and I'll be married. What then?" And she seemed to answer, laughing, "What's what? You'll be divorced, that's what." He came home when the guests had gone, and his mother was doing the dishes, and when she heard her son open the door, she came running out of the kitchen, asking him questions. "What took you so long, Harry? Did you see Abigail off? What did they talk about? Did you go to their house? I saw Abigail off. We talked about personal things, but I didn't go to her place." Harry gave a short report. "Oh, well, what did we talk about? Why can't you say a word to your mother?" Miranda was upset. "I'm curious. I've been dreaming about it for so long." "What is it? What were we supposed to agree on in half an hour?" "We just talked, agreed that we'd call each other, and then we'd see. We haven't planned a wedding yet. It's a little early, isn't it?" "Well, of course, we should talk first. Although he's not young anymore, it's about time. Don't take too long. To be honest, I dream about it day and night, about your wedding. You will live with us. We have a bigger apartment." Miranda began to outline her plans. "Mom, no one's thinking about getting married yet." "What are you talking about? I don't understand." Harry really didn't understand why his mother was so eager to marry him. It was quite simple. "Or are you waiting for that sprat of yours?" "Well, I'm afraid the devils will bring it, and they will. Who needs it in the Emirates, or wherever it is? They're gonna get mad, and they're gonna kick your Emily out. And tell me, son dear, will you really accept her after all this? Don't you have any self-respect? I won't let her on my doorstep, and I'll bequeath this apartment to my nephews." "No, Mom, that's impossible. Why are you running ahead of the locomotive? No one gets married, no one comes back, no one dies. And you." And so they went to their rooms, dissatisfied with each other. But from that day on, Harry and Abigail began to see each other quite often. At first, it was the young man who took the initiative. He realized that it would be difficult for Abigail to be the first to call, to invite to meetings, and without it all communication could stall. But for some reason he didn't want that, because it was interesting to communicate with Abigail, and in general, it was calm and reliable with her. They spent the summer beautifully, going to the country on weekends, swimming and sunbathing, picking berries, talking about everything in the world. Abigail didn't have to think about where to find money for another gift or some expensive entertainment. She didn't like restaurants or clubs. Everything was simple, homely, and Harry felt that was exactly what he was missing. Then Miranda announced that it was Abigail's mom's birthday, and they should definitely go. Harry didn't think of refusing, especially since he had his own views on the day. He figured that if it wasn't Emily, who cared who was around? Abigail was not the worst option. He'd bought a ring beforehand, certainly not as fancy and expensive as the one he'd gotten for Emily, but not because he didn't think Abigail was worthy. He just realized that money should be saved, and in the middle of the celebration, he asked for the floor, got down on his knee, and asked Abigail to become his wife. To the applause and joyful tears of both moms, the consent was received. The wedding was performed, and they began to live together in Harry and Miranda's apartment. The mother gave the young couple 2 rooms, and she herself took the smallest. There was no adjustment of character between the young people. From the first day, they began to live peacefully and quietly, as if they had been married long ago and knew everything about each other. "I can't get enough of you." "I was, Miranda. All my acquaintances complain about their children and daughters-in-law. They have one thing wrong or another. But you are just like Dobes. We are like old landlords, all the talk about what to buy, what to cook, But at best, what movie to watch in the evening, and we are not even 30 yet. How many years to live like this, from breakfast to dinner, from work to home, from home to work? Yes, you can call it stability, but you can also call it green longing. Saved from this routine, memories of her, of Emily, with her would be a completely different life. Soon, and in the measured existence of the Yum family, came a change. Abigail announced that she was pregnant. This was a great joy, but also a source of great anxiety for everyone, both for the future parents and grandmothers, especially since the pregnancy was quite complicated, and at the ultrasound it turned out that Abigail was carrying twins. It was a happy expectation of a miracle. 2 new people were to appear in the world at once. Harry felt truly happy for the first time in a long time, an established adult man. He loved his Abigail, who had given him such happiness, and was prepared to give him 2 children. And then the children were born, a boy and a girl. While Abigail and the children were in the maternity hospital, the relatives were choosing names. For some reason, everyone was expecting 2 boys, but now they had to think of a name for a girl. They thought it would be Ethan and John. Why don't we make her Kathy? Oh no, my grandmother was Kathy. Very hard luck. How about Lucy? Miranda suggested. No, I don't like it. It's a heavy name. Lucy has a difficult personality. How about Lisa? Well, you're the dad. Why don't you say something? Suggested. We went to Harry. He almost said the only woman's name dear to him, Emily, but he bit his tongue in time. As a result, the children were named Jordan and Olivia. Beautiful names, wonderful children. The choice of names, the purchase of the children's dowry, the equipment of the nursery, in all this Harry took a very active part. I feel like the father of the family. And then, finally, Abigail and the children were discharged, and his role was suddenly the last. Life revolved around the twins who needed a lot of attention. No one had time for the father of the family. No, Harry, an adult and sensible man, was far from resenting his wife, and even less jealous of her children. It was just that life had changed unrecognizably. Now he cooked his own breakfast in the morning. His wife slept, exhausted after a sleepless night with the children. Gone were the morning conversations, which, as it turned out, set the tone for the coming day. Gone were the family lunches, the mainstay of their life together, the dinners that relieved the day's tension. What was? There was this. Your shirt. Look in the closet. No? Well, wear the same one you wore yesterday. It's clean. You eat in the kitchen. There's something in the pot. Heat it yourself. I have to feed the kids. You're finally here. Why are you so late from work? I have to go to the clinic with the kids. Don't take your shoes off. Let's go together. And so on. Somehow I coughed. My wife and mother got worried. How did they freak out? Not at all like before. Here's a thermometer. Drink some decoction. Take some mixtures. Put on warm socks. No, not at all. Abigail was worried in a different way. Do you have a cold? Oh, stay away. Don't go past the nursery. Go to the bedroom and stay there. I won't come in, I'm sorry. I don't want the kids to get sick. Even without a cold, he was afraid to go near the children. God forbid you breathe out some adult germ on them. So that's it. He became an extra in his family. Not to talk to someone, not just sit next to someone and like to reproach no one. What else was missing? Not to complain that his wife gives too much time to the children, but it was dreary and lonely. The vacation was approaching, and Harry realized that it did not please him at all. Not having to go to work would be a joy, would it? At work, at least among people you can talk and joke. But at home, what? No one, in fact, does not refuse to communicate. They ask questions, are interested, but so out of politeness. They don't listen to the answers until the end, or run away to the children. The main thing was to see her, to hug her at least once more, and having given his friend his consent, he began to pack. The first thing to do was to report back home. Harry didn't worry much about how Abigail would react to his message. He suspected she wouldn't. Maybe she would be relieved. He decided not to delay the conversation, especially since he was leaving soon. In the evening, when the children were asleep in their room and Abigail was ironing the children's clothes in the kitchen, he asked her bluntly, "Abigail, do you think I should go on vacation for a couple of weeks? Would you be okay with that?" Abigail, not raising her eyes from the delicate rags she was stacking, said a little surprised, "What's there to be offended about? You're on vacation, and you and I can't go yet." "Go, of course. Where are you going? To Turkey. A coworker offered a trip for half price. It won't be too hard on the family budget. All the more reason." "Go, of course. I'm not going to object." And Abigail, smiling brightly, looked at her husband. How do you know, if she had cried, rebuked him, discouraged him, resented him, maybe Harry would have refused. He loved Abigail and the children, and he didn't want to cause them any trouble. But if his departure wouldn't upset anyone, why not go? As it turned out, it would upset and alarm someone. Miranda heard the conversation between husband and wife. She did not interfere at once, did not comment on what was going on, but later she came upon her son. "What are you up to, Harry?" Furiously, she whispered to her son, "What turkey?" "Abigail, so here to kill, and you go to warm your belly? But you two are here, and your mother comes almost every day. I don't have to do anything, and I'm really tired. When the children are older, I'll let Abigail go on vacation alone, and we'll manage here, won't we?" "You will, yes, even though you're not familiar with your own children now. Anyway, don't avert your eyes like I don't know why you want to go to Turkey. Didn't you get a message? But that's too much. I didn't get any news, Mother, and don't make up nonsense. Let's say Emily is in Turkey, but where in Turkey? I have no idea. You think I'm going to run all over the country looking for her? You would, and I assure you, it's a small world. So you have my word. Don't go anywhere, stay home with your wife and kids. What kind of vacations are vacations when the kids are small? It won't end well. You won't find Sprat, and you'll lose your family." Abigail, of course, is quiet, patient, but no patience is unlimited. His mother's words had no effect on Harry's decision. He still went on vacation with a friend. Yes, his mother was right. He had hoped to meet Emily, although he did not believe that it was possible. But the truth was for Miranda. The world was too small. When he checked into the hotel, Harry saw a girl of familiar appearance behind the desk. It wasn't Emily, but the face looked familiar, and he realized it was Mary, the friend his sweetheart had left with. He rushed to her, hoping to find out about Emily, but when she came to the counter, Harry couldn't resist. "Emily, is that you?" With joy and anguish, he said, approaching the girl. "Your papers." With a professional smile, said Emily, holding out her hand for his ticket, and with the same smile, without looking at him, said, as if continuing the business conversation, "You can't come here. Come here in 3 hours. I'll finish, then we'll talk." Everything was just as it was then, 3 years ago. Gasping with happiness, thought Harry, go into his room. And she was still as beautiful, light, cheerful, and loved to tears. Thoughts of Abigail, his mother, his children were gone. It was as if they did not exist in his life, as if he and Emily had parted recently, without having time to change something in their lives. The next 3 hours lasted endlessly. His companion tried to find out something, But Harry answered in vain, and he went to the beach alone, having achieved nothing. Harry, long before the appointed time, was already standing at the service exit, keeping his eyes on the door from which Emily was to appear. She came out, saw Harry, and flashed him her unique smile. Harry went up to the girl and put his arm around her. "Emily, darling, how I've missed you. How I missed you." The girl hugged him too. "I was always thinking about you," she whispered. Their embrace was not passionate or strong. It did not feel the heaviness of their bodies, as if two souls met in space and merged with each other. So they stood side by side in silence, as if conversing with thoughts and feelings. Then they separated. They looked into each other's eyes. "Why don't we go to a restaurant?" Harry suggested. "I don't care about restaurants." The girl dismissed him. "Let's go to your room, order dinner there." They ordered dinner and the next morning breakfast. They were so happy together that there was no time left even for the clarification of relations. Harry didn't want to disturb the union of souls by asking what had happened, why Emily hadn't come back, what she had been doing all this time. She hadn't asked much either, hadn't reacted in any way to the news of his marriage. Harry felt guilty himself. He tried to justify himself. "You were gone and I didn't care about anything. They told me to get married, so I did. How do you want me to come back now? You're married, you have kids, but divorce is still a thing." "Yeah, you know, it's the wife. She's so indifferent." "I don't think she'll be upset. A divorce is a divorce. What's the big deal?" "What about the kids? I'll pay child support. I've been promoted. I think we'll have enough money to live on. Are you coming with me?" "No, it's not that quick. I have a contract. I have to work till the end of the season." "But don't worry, come on. I won't stay long." "Think about it. What's there to do here? You think it's good to be alone all the time. Mary and I have already split up. She's got a boyfriend here. We live apart. We don't talk much. Emily, I swear you'll never regret coming back." They spent the whole week together, but when they were going back to the airport, Harry met his friend. "You had a lot of fun, I see," he said with a sneer, either with disapproval or envy. "What kind of a hottie did you get? Former love? And present and future and forever?" Harry replied with a distracted smile. "Are you going to go on a date once a year?" My friend asked. "Why should I? She's coming. She promised to come back to the city. She has a season to finish. She has a contract." Harry explained. "What about it? And the fact that you've got a family, you've forgotten about that, haven't you?" His voice grew colder and colder. "What's family got to do with it? There are such acts of civil law as divorce. Don't you know?" Harry was already angry at his neighbor's words. "I do, and I know what a pleasure it is to get divorced, but you. Think about it. You've got Abigail the Gold. What about this one? How did she end up in this hotel? Who cares where she works or how she got there? We love each other. She promised she'd come. And Abigail? What can I say? Yes, Abigail Gold. And that's why I hope everything goes well with her, without too much scandal, without screaming, and without tears. Well, if it does, I feel sorry for Abigail. 2 kids after all, and here. Oh, stop it. What's wrong with you?" "I don't know. Stop shouting. It'll be all right. It'll be fine. The main thing for me is to get Emily here, and I'll take care of everything else. Everything else can be taken care of. Whatever you say, I don't think anyone's going to talk you out of it. It's up to you. Just you watch when you come to Abigail. Don't tell me that you've met love, about the divorce, all that stuff. Something tells me that such people don't always keep their word." Shook his head, Buddy. "Bite your tongue, I beg you." He will keep his word, you'll see. But no matter how strong Harry's confidence in Emily's obligatory arrival was, his friend's words had a grip on his soul. He wondered what would happen if Emily really didn't come. They had called. The girl had said that yes, she was already going. There was a week left to go, but the confidence was shattered. Harry doubted, and every day more and more, he was nervous, lost his appetite, slept badly, irritated, and Abigail as if she didn't notice anything. Her husband said nothing, and she, seeing his condition, offered some drops, decoction to calm his nerves, and only that. She wrote off Harry's mood after the vacation as nervous tension, and she herself was quietly rejoicing at his arrival, telling him about the news, mostly about the children. Sometimes only he caught her testing glance, but he kept silent. Indeed, why upset her before her time? Miranda, on the other hand, could not be deceived. She saw the mood in which her son had returned and guessed the reasons for the change. At first she kept silent, but then, left alone with Harry, she asked him if he had seen his sprat. "How is she doing?" "She's probably coming to visit." "Mom, please, whether she's coming or not, whether she's seen or not, let's not talk about it." My son turned away. "I'd love to never know anything about her at all, but thanks to you. Anyway, it's up to you. But I beg you not to upset Abigail. After all, she is your wife, your children's mother. You can't change her for this one. Think about it. How are you going to live if you tell Abigail now and break her heart? Remember, I'm on her side, on Abigail's side, and I don't want to know you if you ever mess with that pest again. I ain't gonna break nobody's heart, and I ain't gonna tell nobody nothing. There's nothing to tell, Mom. Stop it, please. It hurts to hear everything you say." Harry was hurt by the fact that no one believed in his beloved, that mate, that mom. Everyone was sure that Emily wasn't coming, that she had spun around again and given up. And he was sure that she would definitely come. There was nothing left to do but hold back, not saying anything yet to Abigail, who had become even more of a stranger after he'd passed 2 weeks next to the one that seemed to have been made for him. 2 days before the season ended, Emily's phone went silent. She didn't answer calls, she didn't answer texts, and then her phone was disconnected. She disappeared as if those 2 weeks had been some kind of dream, and they were, in fact, a dream. He just went on vacation, just met there the one without whom it is difficult to live, but you can, and you can even happily. His children are growing up. His wife loves him. His mother, however, sometimes looks at him the same testing, and sometimes even mockingly. That's what is funny to her. The fact that the son did not work out with the woman he loved, that's how she knows that it did not work out, because Emily may well show up. Harry argued mentally with those around him. The season had passed, the next season had begun and ended, and there had been no word from his beloved. Life was gradually returning to its normal course, and even the memory of Emily seemed to be fading, though it had not completely disappeared. Could he forget the one on whom so much of his life depended? The one who had shone a bright star on a gray, humdrum life. How much I have learned since I met Emily, learned what love is, and what betrayal is, what pain is. And also during this time, had time to get married, to become a father, to learn what is not love. Learn to live without love, only with responsibilities. How hard can it be? But nothing is harder than being separated from Emily. Will she never, ever be in my life again? I can't bear it, I promise you. The unhappy man in love suffered. He knew perfectly well that he would survive. He had already survived it once, and this time he would manage somehow, and perhaps he would meet her again, and maybe even more than once. Christmas was approaching. the first such holiday for children who were about to turn a year old. They decided to celebrate it at Abigail's mother's house. She was ill and couldn't come, so they couldn't leave her alone for the holidays. First thing in the morning, Harry took his wife and mother and children to his mother-in-law's house and returned home to grab some dishes they had prepared, but did not take at once. Left alone in the empty apartment, he sat down by the table, pulled out his cell phone. A couple of miracles, if fairy tales and soap operas were to be believed. No word from Emily, of course. She hadn't answered her phone in months, and she wouldn't now. She could have at least texted for the holiday. Congratulations, happiness in your personal life, but no. Why don't you dial her number yourself? So Harry decided to do it, and he did. Oh my gosh! The phone was answered. The world's most precious voice answered. Hello, Harry, is that you? Who else, Emily? Where are you, tell me? I can't go on without you. I'll go mad without you, understand? He shouted, almost sobbing with happiness. And I'm here, I'm in town. Harry, why don't we meet? I'm staying at a hotel now. I've got a room. As if nothing had happened, Emily said. Tell me the address. I'll be there in a minute, please, but don't disappear again. I'll be right there. My darling, my only one. Forgetting that they were waiting for him at his mother-in-law's house, that he had to bring some more salads, Harry jumped out of the apartment to run, drive, fly to meet his beloved. At some point, though, he pulled out his phone, quickly typed a message, and sent it to his wife. It's all right. Don't wait, urgent business. How Abigail would understand these words, he was not interested. Let her understand as she wants or understand nothing. That was not the main thing for him now. He was on his way to meet the woman he loved, the only one in his life, and they would never part again. He would never let go of his Emily, and his hands were shaking so much that he couldn't write anything else to Abigail, but he wanted to write everything, that they were getting divorced, and that he loved someone else. He didn't write, but fine, it was all the same. Why write? We'll have to meet again and say everything in person, and then her mother will tell her if she doesn't understand something. All right, Emily is here. She's not in Turkey anymore, she's at home here. And now I will not let her go anywhere, never and for no reason. He thought, hurrying to Emily's room. Everything would be different now. Everything would be different, just the way he wanted it to be, just as long as she didn't go anywhere else. Emily opened the door for him, still as fresh, beautiful, loved. Emily, I beg you, tell me, what do you want? What are you missing? Anything, just don't disappear again. Don't ever disappear. I'll do anything for you. Do you believe me? From the doorway he shouted. Emily was silent and slightly bowed her head, looking at Harry with a smile in which perhaps there was deceit and betrayal, but there was also love, and for that, anything could be forgiven. Come on, Harry. New Year's Eve is coming. Let's celebrate it properly, shall we? Without answering, the girl said. Her gaze, the sound of her favorite voice was freezing. Harry hugged his beloved, kissed her, felt her kiss back. Only close to midnight did he come to his senses, edge of consciousness. Harry heard his phone ringing. He realized that his family was worried, hurt, perhaps angry with him, but what did it matter when he was near his beloved? Absolutely none, and there was nothing to answer him. Not to his mother, not to his wife. Oh, Harry, it'll be Christmas soon. Let's order dinner, champagne, something else. It's a holiday. You can't just sit around all night. It's good not to sit around, but we won't be satisfied with love alone. The menu was next to the phone. They ordered what they needed. I wish that we would never part. Harry made a wish, piously believing it would come true. It was unknown what Emily had wished for, but they spent the night together and were happier than ever. Harry's phone rang a few more times, then went silent, and the next day the fairy tale began to crumble. Emily informed him that she had to go back to Istanbul. "Why?" "Don't go, darling, but I'm telling you, I can't live without you. Please stay, but not forever, not until spring." "I can't stay, Harry. I've been offered a job there that I'll never get here, and I'll never get money like that. So there's no way I can stay, you know. I love you. I need you. But I'm sorry. Why don't you come to my place?" "I'll come, but I have a job here, and what will I do there? Begging? Sit on your neck? Okay, I'll think of something. I'll talk to you. We'll find you a job." Emily spoke coldly, businesslike. "Pack your things. Look, my whole life is out there right now, and my life is you. I can't stay without you, Emily. I can't live without you. Please stay." Harry begged. "My darling, my only one." The girl softened. "I'm sorry, but I can't go back to the store. I can't rent an apartment here. I can't stand this cold. I can't live without sunshine for 6 months. I can't even do it for you, you know. That's why I'm telling you to get your affairs in order and come back." "Emily, I haven't given up hope, Harry." "Well, Emily, all you think about is yourself. Can't you live?" "I was getting angry, Emily. You've had a great life. You've married and had children, and your career's on the upswing, and now you want to have a mistress at your fingertips? That's convenient, and how I'm going to live my life doesn't interest you. I'm telling you I'll get divorced, we'll live together. You won't work at all, but you didn't get divorced, and you share the apartment with your mother, and I won't live with her. And from your paycheck, deduct child support for the 2 kids, your wife, and maybe your mother. What's left for the 2 of us? Harry, don't hold me up. I'm gonna miss my plane. You can walk me out if you want, but without the wailing." Harry drove his beloved to the airport. He was so depressed that not that wailing, words could not say. "At least don't disappear, stay in touch." That's all he asked. "I'll think of something, I'll be there. We'll be together, I promise." Emily promised not to disappear, said goodbye and left, as if vanishing into thin air. It was time for Harry to go home to his family, and he didn't know how to explain his act. What his wife and mother would say was irrelevant. Emily had left. That's what was terrible, and all the others were still there. They wouldn't go anywhere. They'd blow up, and that was it. Emily's gone. That's the trouble. And what these people will say or do, who cares? I won't even resist. Harry thought with a grim grin. Miranda was the first to arrive. "Merry Christmas," she said dryly. "What are you going to tell me about your adventures?" "I won't tell you anything, Mom." Harry sank tiredly onto the bench in the hallway. "You can make something up if you want to." "I haven't made anything up, and I don't want to tell the truth." "Is Abigail in?" "Well, it doesn't take a genius imagination. It's clear without your explanation." "Abigail, you say? Where else would she be? Or were you hoping she'd gone?" "I wasn't hoping for anything." "Let's not talk about it. I'm exhausted, really." "Poor guy, he's exhausted. Are you going to sit in the hallway?" "Well, sit there. What can I do?" Her mother went to her room, and Abigail came out of their bedroom, pale, puffy-eyed, with a drooping face. Harry felt an acute pang of pity for his wife, a sense of irredeemable guilt for her. "Abigail, I'm sorry." He slid off the bench, knelt, and tried to grab Abigail's hand. "I'm sorry. I don't know how it happened." "Don't." She pulled Abigail's hand away. "I don't need anything else. I don't have time." And left for the kitchen without even glancing at her kneeling, bowed husband. He sighed, got up, wandered into the room. Well, everything at home seems to have turned out all right. The mother, of course, expressed her ewe, but even in a lighter form than one might have feared. The wife, but apparently decided to kill with contempt, which is also not the worst option. The pity and guilt somehow subsided. Abigail, to all appearances, didn't really care, that is, when he didn't come and didn't answer his calls. She was probably worried, concerned. Maybe she tried on the role of a widow, but now her husband is back. He is alive, healthy, at home, so everything is normal. If she were really dissatisfied, that is, insulted, offended, killed by his actions, would have left, would have filed for divorce. Well, or scandal raised a real scandal, with breaking dishes, tears, violent explanations, and this, nothing else is not necessary. Well, do not need and please, he is also not going to explain or apologize for the rest of his life. He will live and live as before, waiting for his beloved. He won't disappear for the third time. It didn't work out so well before Christmas. Mostly because of his mother, who looked at her son with contempt, pressed her lips together, refused to eat with everyone, and hissed something judgmental. Abigail also withdrew at first, talking little, that is, almost never communicated with Harry at all. It was hard to live in such an environment, especially since there was such an icing of relatives on Christmas vacation. Even at work, there was no escape from such a harsh atmosphere. If the women wanted to punish Harry in this way, and to get some special apology from him, they miscalculated. The more his wife and mother turned away from him, the further he himself became estranged from them. He liked walking, though the weather was not favorable for it, but he was sick of sitting at home. Besides, there was always the possibility that Emily would call, and he would not talk to her in front of his own people. But she did not call, and she answered Harry's calls very seldom, referring to her work, but she did answer, and was so affectionate, so sweet in these short conversations. That's what a real woman should be like, and for me it was Emily who was perfect. And Abigail, what? She's a fish, she doesn't live, and she won't let me. I should get a divorce and go to Istanbul to my one and only, already a free man. He thought so, but he did not do anything yet, and did not even talk to his wife about divorce. It's not that he was afraid, it's just that he had 2 one-year-old children. Do they divorce people like that? In any case, there will be talk, and here all is conspired to praise Abigail. That is, she and before everyone loved her, talking about what she is nice, good, but somehow it was not conspicuous. But now you stick your nose out the door, and some neighbor girl will jump in like a tick. How's Abigail? She's so wonderful. When I see her, I'm in such a good mood. Well, God bless her. Say hello. I went to work, same song. How's your wife? You're lucky. You found the perfect wife. It's like someone's got everyone talking about Abigail. Well, you should have had her. Harry thought with annoyance. Who'd want her with 2 kids? She wasn't much use to anyone without them. Not only did the constant talk about Abigail spoil his mood, but also the fact that Emily wasn't calling him, and she was answering his calls less and less often. The conversations were getting shorter, and in the background I kept hearing music, cheerful voices. Was our reunion being delayed for a reason? If they intercept my Emily, what then? I had to make a decision. I was also constrained by the fact that there was not much money, at least for the first time they were necessary, and then we'll see. It was unbearable to keep everything inside, but there was no one to talk to. Only Mason, a close friend, he dared to say everything that had boiled up in his soul. Mason lived alone, in a rather large apartment, left by his parents, and Harry at one time even had a desire to rent a room from him, to live separately from his own, but did not dare. Mason was his own man in their house, had been friends with Miranda for a long time, and even seemed to have a fondness for Abigail. He never showed it, though. He was always correct, remembering that she was his friend's wife, but he couldn't bear it now. So Harry decided to pour out his soul to his only friend. "I've put the car on sale, and I can get a lot for it, but I have some savings left. I'm going to Istanbul. I can't go on without her, my Emily. Are you crazy? What about your family?" Mason was surprised. "What about family, Mason?" "I am superfluous there, in my present condition, you know. I can't look at my mother or my wife. Even my children are a burden." "Yeah, well, I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. What am I supposed to forgive?" "I'm not judging you, but you're doing something bad." "Aren't you ashamed?" "I'm ashamed, but not ashamed because I'm sad. I can't go on living like this." Harry was sure he was right. "Then why did you get married?" "To have kids. How will you look them in the eyes later?" Mason realized that he couldn't talk his friend out of it, but he felt so sorry for Abigail and the babies. "I think they'll understand. Anyway, when they grow up, I'll tell them this: never give up on your love. Never settle for less. That may be the best advice they'll ever get, however you get it. No, Harry, I'm not moralizing to you. I'm not a priest. I'm not a teacher. If you want to go, go. I just want to say one thing. Are you sure you're not going to blow it with your love again? How many times has your Emily deceived you? Not again, I hope. And you know, Mason, her deception is worth more to me than any right. And you really don't have to lecture me. I'm not hurting anyone. The kids are young, and Abigail doesn't seem to care if I'm here or not. Look, if you want to go, go, but don't get too cheap. No, I do business with reliable people. They won't cheat." Harry left without understanding his friend's words, without heeding his advice. Mason thought gloomily about how lucky some people were, and how the lucky ones did not appreciate their good fortune. Why should he have such luck, he asked. The love of the best woman, who gave birth to 2 wonderful children, and he breaks away and goes where? To some hussy who doesn't want to know him. Yes, Mason had a thing for Abigail, but she was the wife of an old friend, therefore unavailable under any circumstances. And now, even if Harry doesn't get divorced, which he won't, he would come to Istanbul, see what the beautiful Emily was doing there, and return home with nothing. And Abigail would probably take him in. Harry started packing at home, not really thinking about what he would say to his wife. Mumbled something about a business trip. "Is that so?" said Abigail. "For how long? But how do I know how things will work out? I'll text you or call you. If things go well and the business trip lasts longer, can I consider myself a free woman?" "What are you talking about?" Harry asked unhappily. Was Abigail starting to realize something? "Do you still think I'm a homely clod who can't see beyond diapers and pots and pans? But the truth is, I see and I understand. I know you married me while loving someone else. I thought a life together would make a difference, but you're leaving, you're disappearing. How long do I have to put up with this? I know you sold the car knowing you weren't going on any business trips. Who put that in your ear? Your mother, I suppose, or some of the sympathizers who feel sorry for Saint Abigail. Well, listen to them, listen to them. No one blows me anything, on the contrary, everyone tries to assure me that you are a wonderful husband and family man, and you would be like that if it weren't for all this. I understand everything, even why you're lying to me, why you won't come clean and divorce me." Abigail's voice sounded sad, but without tears. She was not going to cry or make a scandal. "And why is that?" Harry asked. "It's very simple. You don't know how your favorite woman will take you. Maybe it will not work out with her, and then you can safely return home, where you will always be waiting for a plate of food and your own woman in bed. Don't be silly. I'm traveling for work, no women. Stop making up nonsense. I'll go and come back. I don't know how long I'll be there. And don't get on my nerves. I want to leave before my mother gets back, or she'll start giving me a hard time. Go on, there's no hurry to get home. Abigail grinned. Harry really didn't delay, took his things, kissed his children, kissed his wife on the cheek, and left without waiting for his mother. He was glad of such good fortune. Miranda would not have been delicate, would have said everything she thought about his business trips, or maybe she'd try to keep her son. That's what she told her daughter-in-law when she got home from work. What do you mean he's gone? Where? Why? What business trips? Why did you let him go, Abigail? What could I do? Lie across the door? Get down on my feet? I still have my dignity. I put up with it because I loved him and hoped he'd love me back, but I guess he didn't. I'll file for divorce, and in the meantime, I'll probably move in with my kids. What are you doing? Why would you do that? Now Miranda was ready to lay across the door, terrified. What will I do without you, without grandchildren? What are you doing? My son's away. I don't know if he'll be back. Are you going to leave too? No, Abigail, don't leave me. The women hugged each other and decided not to part. Abigail was left to live with her mother-in-law. They had been on the best of terms from the first, and Harry's behavior did not affect it at all. Of course, it wasn't easy for them. Both of them were tied up with taking care of children who had already started walking and were very restless. Neither Miranda nor Abigail had a car, and neither had a license, so they sometimes resorted to the help of Mason, who, after the departure of a friend and the news that Abigail filed for divorce, began to visit them, to provide the necessary assistance, to play with the children, whom he sincerely loved. He was in no hurry to explain himself to Abigail, for he feared that she was still suffering because of Harry's deed, from whom he had heard very little and no news of any substance. Harry arrived in Istanbul and went straight to the hotel where Emily, according to her, worked at the information desk. On the day he checked in, there was a different, unfamiliar girl at the desk who didn't answer any questions about Emily, but that didn't bother the young man very much, because his beloved might have had a day off. However, she didn't show up the next day and the third. The hotel was luxurious, and it cost a lot to stay in it, and although Harry had money, it might run out, and he could not wait for new arrivals. After waiting for Emily to appear and despairing of seeing her, Harry decided to spend the evening in the bar, just to sit and drink, to get rid of his longing for Emily for a while. It was there, in this hot spot, that he saw his one and only half undress it. She was wriggling around a gleaming pole, stripping. She was as good as ever, but that wasn't what struck Harry. It was the sight of a dozen drunken men devouring her with their eyes, whistling, applauding, encouraging the girl to get rid of the rest of her toiletries. When Emily finished her dance, Harry moved toward her, but the road was blocked by 2 large security guards. It would be unwise to confront them. Harry decided to wait until the end of his beloved's work evening. He habitually took up his post at the service exit, hoping to intercept Emily. Staying in the hall, where she walked almost naked between the tables, exposed to everyone's lustful gaze, was unbearable. It was a long wait, but when Emily finally came out, Harry rushed to her. "My dear, are you here? I've come to see you." Emily, not expecting such a meeting, did not express much joy. "Yes, I'm here. Where did you come from?" "Why?" "Unexpectedly." The girl was confused. "I told you I'd come. I can't do it without you. We'll always be together, won't we? I've left everyone, my mother, my wife, my children. I don't need anyone but you. And you, why are you in this bar? He asked me in a confused way. I dance here. I'm a stripper. Does that embarrass you? Emily regained her fun, playful mood. A stripper is not a prostitute. If that makes you uncomfortable, I'm not sleeping with anyone. We're not even allowed to have personal contact with visitors. And where are you staying? This hotel. Will you invite me to your place? I'm tired and hungry, to be honest. Dancing is a lot of work, but you can give it up if we're together, can't you? I'd do anything for you, anything to make you happy. Well, we'll see if I should quit my job. Emily cheered as she made her way to Harry's room. You've made some money, haven't you? Yeah, well, you've never been poor or greedy. I'm glad you came, honestly. I missed you. Always thinking about that crazy Christmas night. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hugs, kisses later, place your order. Let's pick something not too heavy together. I have to watch my figure. Yes, Emily's figure was in perfect shape. She became even more slender, flexible, and her acrobatic caresses drove Harry crazy. He realized he could hardly go home to his wife and children. Finally, about his beloved, with the God-given woman herself, and let her be a stripper if she liked it. Let all the men look at her, drool and die of envy for the one she is alone with every day. And he, well, yes, he'll be jealous, but Emily is no Abigail. There'll never be peace with her. And someday they will come home, live as a family, and no one will stop them from being happy. The happiness lasted for 6 months, then Harry ran out of money, and with it his love for Emily. Harry began to hint that it would be a good idea to return home to a place where he could earn money and provide Emily with the lifestyle she needed. Back home. Back to you. My home is here, Harry. I've got work here. I've got money. I've got fame. And what's out there? But I told you, I'll work, I'll provide for you. With what? Vegetables to make soup, laundry detergent to wash your socks. You see, darling, I'm used to all this squalor. I can't stand the thought of this house. No, don't ask me. I'm never going back there. But what are we going to live on? I've got nothing left, and I can't get a job at my social status. So come back, Harry. They're waiting for you at home. You won't be homeless. You won't be unemployed. Don't go whining about how you can't do it without me, and you love me and all that. I've heard it, but I've never seen it done. Well, I've seen things that don't make a man look good. You betray your own too easily. Will you betray me too? Emily, if I betrayed, it was only for your sake, and to betray you, my beloved, how can you imagine such a thing? Exclaimed Harry, wringing his hands. I can imagine it very easily, darling. Yes, you sort of love me now, but only because I haven't turned into a pet chicken. The minute you see me in a kitchen apron and old slippers, you'll start looking for another ideal. Don't shake your head. That's just the way it's going to be. Emily waved her hands in the air. You won't walk around in slippers. We'll have a housekeeper, a cook. Whatever you want, promised Harry. I was surprised at how pragmatic his beloved, who had seemed a model of carelessness and frivolity, had suddenly become. The housekeeper? I'd have to pick up her slippers, and you'd have to finish your lunches. How much is your salary? What's your alimony? What are we gonna use to rent an apartment? Or are you thinking of throwing your family out on the street? Or is your mommy gonna welcome me with open arms? Harry, come back here and get some perspective on real life. Emily, but what about then? What do we do, tell me? Harry felt a cold sweat run down his back. What kind of us? What kind of us? Wake up, there is no us. There's you with your problems and me with mine. I'm staying here because I don't see any other option. I suggest you go home and live a normal life. That seems to be the only option too. And mind you, darling, I make a good living, but I'm not going to support you. I haven't gotten to the point where I can pay men yet. It was the end of all hope. Harry still tried to persuade his beloved to leave, tried to find a way to stay in Turkey, but both these options were equally unrealizable. Realizing that he had no money left, only for the return trip, he began to pack, to Emily's great joy and relief. "Don't you love me at all? Have you ever loved me?" She asked him goodbye. "I have. I loved a strong man who could do something, not a whiner begging for love. We had a wonderful time, we were happy, but I can't offer you anything else, I'm sorry." Harry flew home with a heavy heart, so heavy that he feared the plane would collapse under these reveries. He didn't know what he would say to his wife, how his mother would greet him. However, he cared little about that. He had parted from Emily, and probably forever. His hometown greeted him with overcast weather, a fine cold rain. It was as if nature, too, wanted to aggravate his despondency. He entered the apartment, empty and apparently for days. Where had everyone gone? Though it delayed an explanation, it was troubling. Dialed Abigail's number, no answer. The phone was either dead or turned off. Called my mom. Miranda answered right away, but her voice was so foreign and cold. "Harry, where are you?" "I'm home, Mom." "Where are you?" "Where's Abigail and the kids? Where did you all disappear to?" "We're not in the habit of disappearing. I'm in a sanitarium until the end of the month, and when I get back, I'd hate to have you home." "Abigail?" "I don't know, but I don't think she'll be very happy to see you either." "I'm sorry, I have to go to my treatments." Wow, his mother gave up on him. His wife probably didn't either. He didn't have his mother-in-law's number, nor did he want to go to her. Abigail might be there, but he didn't want to talk to her in front of witnesses. Neither did being in an empty apartment. He went out, wandering at first without purpose, but then he saw the house where Mason lived. He decided to visit his friend, to find out how things were going at work, and maybe he knew about the changes in his family. Turns out he did. Abigail and the kids were at Mason's house. It was a real family idyll. Mason and the kids were playing on the floor. Abigail was sitting next to him. Not many people paid much attention to Harry's appearance. "Abigail, I'm back. Why are you here?" he asked his wife. "Because I'm with Mason now." Calm as ever, Abigail replied. "I filed for divorce." You betrayed me?" Harry couldn't believe what was happening. "Consider it so, if it makes you feel better. Mason has been more of a father to our kids than you have been in 6 months. Go away, Harry. We don't want to see you." What was there to do? Harry came home without lighting a light, sat in the empty, uncozy, and cold room. That was it. The beloved abandoned, the mother turned away, the wife gone. What's left? Loneliness.